Hello, UB. I am here in Phoenix, your coach and resident gamer, alongside my good friend Zigalo. Say hi to the people, Moss.
Howdy gamers, howdy gamers. How's it going?
So, we decided to make an operator tier list. We saw one on Twitter the other day, and we're like, hey, we should do that. Thought exercises like these, where you take the game and put it through a more abstract and just critical lens, it's really good to do thought exercises like these because it can put things in perspective from time to time. Obviously in Siege, you can't go and like pick every operator in the OP tier for every site and stuff like that. Obviously, that makes that's just how it is. But abstract thought processes like these can help you with, like maybe I should prioritize bringing this operator over this one for this setup because they're just situationally better all around. The criteria we're using to judge all the operators, we're taking everything into account. So we're going to take their utility, their kit, so their weapon, their speed, all that, what their actual gadget is, how flexible their gadget is, how easy it is to synergize with everyone else on that side, and so on. Speaking about the tiers themselves, so at the very bottom we have the throwing tier. So these are your operators who you're actively harming your team by bringing them in almost any situation. There is almost always someone better to bring. Niche operators are operators who you're only going to pull out once every couple matches. I mean, it's operators that very specific uses for them and in very specific setups. Situational are your typical like counter picks and so on. They have a Monty, let me run Capcan or something. I don't know. Things like that. You're right. They're more situational. You're not always gonna bring them in every setup, but they definitely have their uses. Average, you know, average. They're good. You're not harming your team by having them. You can run them with most lineups. There's just sometimes better operators. Above average are your good operators. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then OP are operators that, generally speaking, unless you're running, again, very specific things, you should be trying to fit them into most, if not all, of your lineups. So, all that being said, Moss, you can see, correct? You can see this as well?
Yep.
Alright, so
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll start off with Ace here. I'm
Alrighty.
curious to hear your thought and where you think. So we'll each say where we think they should be placed, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Me personally, I think Ace is probably slotted as one of those few attacker OP operators.
Hmm.
I mean, he has hard breach. His hard breach is a very good middle line between Thermite and Hibana.
Hmm.
Being able to make pretty decently sized holes, also having 3 charges, also being a ranged hard breach that doesn't require you to be up on the wall. The other thing that I think separates him from those two operators is also his kit. I mean, he has the AK-12, one of
Yes.
the strongest DPS guns in the game, and he also has smokes. So, like, very good operator. He can do a lot of things. He could burn ADS. He could also set up executes. Very strong weapon. Once he gets his hard breach, his utility off the board, he can instantly become like just a very strong opponent to fight against. You can just walk up, start becoming a fragger, unless he is your actual
Planter. Yeah.
planter. But some people have honestly, like especially on like club or sites where they need one or two hard breach, more than one hard breach specifically, have used him more as like a
Hmm.
soft support and just allowed him to have that flexibility to be able to throw the smokes and help assist with the plant. So I think he's just in that category as
So
probably like a must-use
so you're gonna say
operator on
OP.
attack right now.
You're gonna say OP.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement, and we can always go back and tweak. Like if we don't like, if I'm like, oh, maybe this guy should not be in the same tier as this guy, then we can go back and bump people around. So
Sure.
we can always go back. But I'll go with OP. I think that's a good way to start off. Next up is Alibi. Alibi is an interesting one
Mm-hmm.
because now with how many defenders have lost deployable shields over time, I would have used to put her in throwing tier, but
Mm-hmm.
the MX4 Storm 3 speed, very good. You have you have the impacts if you're playing as a roamer. Though if I'm playing her as a roamer, like I'm probably playing her because I need her deployable shield somewhere more than anything.
You can also bring the shotgun pistol.
Yes, you have the
You
bailiff as well, so you can help.
You can still make holes on site if needed.
So I'm leaning towards niche tier for her because you know that deployable shield. There's times where you just need a shield. You need a roamer with a deployable shield. I don't know. Elby kind of fits that. And her prismas you can just throw wherever. Like they're not great, but they're better than nothing. So I think I'm leaning towards niche tier.
Very weak in this meta.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think just the fact that she brings some decent secondary utility doesn't hurt, I guess. So.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And
probably not in the throwing tier.
Yeah,
just relative to some options that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, and
especially the next one, which is Amaru.
Yes, Amaru. So I mean, I'm thinking we're on the same page. Throwing tier for Amaru. She has the G8, which is great. But realistically, and we're looking at this from a competitive lens. I mean, obviously, you know, there's some like ranked involved in that side of thing too. But like generally speaking, right? You and I are speaking from a very competitive lens on this. Amaru, you're flying through a window onto site 90% of the time. There's a few situations where it's like, oh, I want to get up on Skylight of Cafe early to maybe get a pick. But, like, realistically, the defense is already going to have their setup done, so you're not going to actually catch them by doing that anyways, you know?
Yeah.
And just, like, yeah, sure, G8 angle grip, great. Like, it's a great gun, but you bring nothing else to the team, and more likely than not, you're dying when you're just Amaruing into sight. So her gadget has no synergy with anyone else, realistically.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, her gadget's literally trying to just get an early one up on defenders, but in a competitive standpoint, where most teams have pretty defined strategies in place and they know where they need to be and at least get there before the start of the round, her gadget is pretty much nullified, and you'd rather just have anyone else with some sort of utility be your entry for you at that point. Like, even, I don't even know. You would just, I could justify anyone else over Amaru, honestly.
Yeah, I can't
really imagine. Not had any usage in comp almost ever.
Yeah. So we'll go with throwing tier for that. I think that's a pretty good baseline for throwing tier right there.
Yeah.
Ashe. All right. So Ashe is an interesting one here, Mouse. I want to hear your thoughts on where Ashe lands in this.
I would say Ashe is probably an above average pick. I think mostly just because she brings, she did lose some ADS clear in those flashbangs. That actually hurts. But overall, obviously, like, there's not too many options you go for in the primary entry besides maybe Zofia. She does have more breaching rounds now, though, so you technically could take more off the board if you have the proper ADS clear. And I mean, if this was last season's meta, the utility meta with her not having flashes, I would say she's probably just an average pick because she couldn't clear any of her own shields. But now that we've seen a lot less Wamai play, Jaeger's been nerfed, a lot less defenders, like you mentioned, have shields in general. She can get away with being a pretty decent entry option for teams that prefer an Ashe, and she can also get, a lot of stuff open. So
yeah, I think I completely agree, Mouse, with the above average, and also another point too is like she has the soft breach gadgets now. So
yeah, she has breach charges too.
Yeah,
so you have technically 6 soft breach options,
which isn't great. Like, it's not Sledge, it's not Buck. But in a pinch, it's better than trying to get it with, like, Jackal Shotgun or something, So, yeah, I think above average is a pretty good landing spot for Ashe. Onto Bandit. Bandit's a interesting one, to say the least. I mean, you have the MP7, 3-speed, Nitro Cell. You're pretty effective as a roamer, but Bandit batteries are inherently a gadget that, like, it's so dependent on what the map bans are and stuff. You know what I mean? Or map bans, operator bans. He
becomes really an option if Thatcher's available.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing.
And that's the sad part is you can't really use him as a roamer then. He needs to be on site juggling his gadget. We haven't really seen a lot of Bandit play on a lot of maps besides
I agree.
To be honest. I would say he's. I mean, I was gonna put him at average, but after saying this over, he's almost veering into that like situational realm of like we've only seen him on like a few sites now. You would mostly prefer like a Kaid if he's available,
Yeah.
like over him, obviously, just
Yep.
because you could place his gadget in a lot safer positions.
Yeah, and I
Even
mean,
a mute also is like pretty decent compared to Bandit.
exactly, because you can deny the drones and stuff with mute. You can hold doorways down, and the thing too with Bandit is, and at the competitive level, most teams understand how maps are laid out. Right, they understand vertical play. So those Bandit batteries are very easy to take out from underneath, take out from above if a team's doing their due diligence. So, yeah, originally I was thinking like, oh, Bandit's average tier, but yeah, talking it over, I think we can slot him in situational for now. And maybe maybe if we're seeing that, oh, there's not enough average tier, maybe we bump him up. But he's definitely not niche. But I think situational is a pretty good landing spot for him.
Yeah, right now he's definitely just his play rate's just gone down a bit to where I feel like he's comfortably in that position.
I also just realized too, this whole thing is alphabetical order except for Rooney and Tachanka.
Yeah, what the hell?
Nice. All right. On to Blackbeard. This is an interesting one. I mean, Blackbeard at the really low levels is strong because no one can shoot at each other. In like the mid like gold levels, he's kind of weak. And then you get up to the high tiers and he's like strong again. But then you get to competitive, and does he bring enough to the table as an operator? He's really interesting how he can fluctuate.
I mean, his ability is just not dying from a headshot in the first bullet.
Which Siege, that's a huge deal.
Of course, when he's a 2-2 as well, and his shield gives you a decrease in your speed modifier, he's not really a solid entry option because he can't actually cut people off on the roam clear. He's pretty slow. He has some viableness on just like window play,
coastline,
maps, like,
consulate.
I would say like consulate and coastline. Yeah. Otherwise, though, like he has maybe flashes, which I guess are okay. Obviously, his gun's not the best thing in the world, but when you have a shield in front of it, it all of a sudden becomes somewhat preferable for some people.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, now that we had this discussion about Bandit, he sort of falls in that line, but like at the same time, on attack, you find it hard to justify bringing him. Most of the time, you kind of give him to a player you feel like maybe struggling, so you're like, hey, take Blackbeard.
Yeah.
You just sit here. I mean, he's not really revolved around many strats anymore. He's more so just picked if you need a boost, or you're just like, hey, we're gonna do this.
You just need them to hold one specific thing
here because they're kind of wrecking us. So like, I would still feel like he's in that niche sort of area.
Yeah.
Like I have yet to see really any high tier competitive play bring him because again, like he has no utility besides just being someone that's like harder to kill, or he's like in that sense he's probably close to Amaru in the fact that like his utility is very selfish. It doesn't add anything to the actual attack.
Yeah.
But obviously Blackbeard, like you mentioned, can be very tough to deal with sometimes.
Yeah.
You really just need to not peek into him. Like if there's a Blackbeard on the table, it gives you even more reason to not swing and to not over aggress. Because this man can't really do much besides hold a choke point.
Yeah,
Once he gets moving, he's pretty slow, and if you have crosses set up, you shouldn't have a problem taking him out.
Completely agree. And what saves him from throwing tier again is he's not actively harming the team either by having him.
Yeah.
Like he's not Amaru who you're going in and it's a 4v5. You know what I mean? He can take gunfights and win them. It's just he's so slow moving around the map, peeking corners and stuff, that just doesn't work at the competitive level. People are either A, going to melt through your shields, or B, leg shot you, and it's just not going to be fun. On to Blitz. So, me personally, I think Blitz is throwing tier. I'll just come right out and say it. Tons of counters, you establish crosses, and shields, I mean, with the guard break mechanic, are pretty not good, I think is the nicest way to put it. I'm gonna put him throwing tier. What do you think?
I agree with the throwing tier designation. He
Yeah.
is just not really synergized in many lineups nowadays.
Used to be. Oh my god.
There would be some pretty scary LATAM teams that would run blitz. I remember
NIP.
NIP. Were they Black Dragons originally? I
Yeah,
think
they were
right
Black
before they
Dragons
got
at
picked
that
up by
point
them.
still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Julio. Oh man,
That was fun to
Blitz
watch though.
Blitz would be a menace too. I mean, even before he actually saw some comp play, he was actually even worse. Remember, he was three
He was
armor,
even worse, yeah, because he couldn't sprint.
and he couldn't. The shield could not, wouldn't be in his face when he'd sprint.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be like Monty. You'd be exposing your whole body if you even hit shift key. So like
Mm-hmm.
he was like terrible. And I mean, this changes gave him some life for a few seasons, but
Yeah.
now you just don't see blitz anymore. Like I remember even DZ would occasionally run blitz on attack. They'd give mint. They'd give mint the shield. They
it was
let him run
impressive.
in, make some plays.
Yeah.
It was impressive for sure. But again, I feel like the utility meta has really impacted a lot of teams, methodologies and thinking, and blitz just doesn't bring you much utility at all.
Yeah, and then they slowly
why would you
reeled
have
him
a guy
back.
that have to,
Yeah.
that's one guy who doesn't have a gun that can't shoot back at a defender or a roamer.
Exactly.
You can't really chase people down either, especially because a lot of roamers are 2-speed without a shield or 3-speed.
Mm-hmm.
So they technically can get away. Didn't his flash radius also get reduced?
Yeah, he can't flash as far. I mean,
like
his
less than 5 meters maybe. He's just not a great option anymore.
yeah. On the Buck, I'm gonna say average for Buck. I think he is probably the best definition of average we have on this list. You're not harming your team by having him. He's usually good enough. Like, he's not gonna kill your team by bringing him. But yes, there are times where having Sledge is better. Having a true entry like Ash is better. He's just in. Castle barricades. Good luck. Like, you're not gonna get through them without some help. For me at least, I think he's probably the closest definition of average we have on this list.
Yeah, I would say just because the presence of Sledge, it makes it very hard for him to stand out as an operator.
Mm-hmm.
Just because right now Sledge with nades is just seen as so much more preferable than Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to say he's situational, although you don't usually bring him a lot, sadly. But I agree with you that he does have flashes. His gun's recoil got reduced, and he got more ammo.
His guns,
for some, he got a tiny little buff in that case. And I mean, his utility is the most flexible and variable, I guess, soft reach, just being able to go above and below floors from a range. And he has so much ammo, so like he can do a lot of damage, but just right now, yeah. I think he's a pretty solid average pick, I guess. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now,
we have Castle.
I'm tempted either situational, either niche, probably leaning towards situational, though.
I would say, yeah, I think more so situational. He also has not been seeing the most play as of late.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the fact that everyone now runs like a Sledge, right? Sledge is so prominent that there's no reason to put barricades on windows, really. Not too many windows that the attackers can easily access, because Sledge is just going to run up and punch it down. Like, I mean, everyone used to go on gym clubhouse setups. They'd put castles on con window, gym window. And what happened, teams would just get on those windows immediately and open those for free. They wouldn't have to use Ash rounds, Soph impacts. Like, you just take Sledge, or you use a breaching charge. Everyone has breaching charges now, it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Castle, his UMP is not great either.
Yeah, his overall.
He has a shotgun, which is good for rotations, and if you need to make some extended sight setups and holes, obviously. But overall, he's just not the most viable option, but he's also not really bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is some worth to still bring him if you're planning to do a decent extension. So I think he slots pretty decently in the situational, but I do agree with you. He's feeling like he's sort of becoming niche in a sense, because teams are not having issues really clearing through castles. I mean, speaking of clubhouse as well, the old SSG roam.
Yep.
Everyone's sort of leaning towards the now DZ roam, which is not even bringing castle, reinforcing most of the hatches and just putting mute jammers, reinforcing the walls on top 4.
Yeah.
and just playing wherever the attack's pushing from and just fall off on the other end. Delay it still like a minute and a half like the SSG roam could accomplish, but not have to sacrifice hatches and not have to use castles. So like just a sort of, yeah, I guess Clubhouse is, I guess, almost microcosm of castles like decreasing play, but I don't think he's niche just yet.
Yeah,
he's not
not
like
quite.
An alibi or something that you find it really hard to bring unless for some reason you just want a shield.
I will say, it's really weird seeing Bandit and Castle in the same tier, so maybe we'll revisit that as we keep filling this out.
Yeah.
On to Capital now. So Capital, it really depends on who's playing Capital, as stupid as it sounds, because Capital as an operator, and like I have first-hand experience with this, I know a lot of like the UB players doing stuff. Like on paper, he seems easy. Oh, you just flame it out, you smoke this, whatever. But there's a slight art, to setting up things like one-way smokes and stuff. And if you don't have that experience, because he's the only operator who really does one-way smokes, right? Like all your other smoke grenades, it's not like Valorant or whatever where you throw it at like a smoke bomb at a wall and it just sticks and pops, and that's easy to create one-way smokes. But like Capital is really the only operator in Siege who can consistently create one-way smokes. I feel like he has a very low skill floor where in a high ceiling. So if you know how to play him, like he's a really great op. If you're not quite as familiar with him, he can be difficult to get use out of off the rip.
Yeah. I mean, he lost his flashbangs too. Replaced by secondary hard breach, which no one has really found the most usage for in a really competitive sense as of yet.
Besides
I mean,
hatches.
it's still okay to have you could bring that and still use it for a hatch maybe, or just like a single wall. In general, though, I mean, for some reason, like we're not seeing a lot of Capital play a lot, and it's weird, right? Because Lamai isn't as prevalent anymore. You feel like Capital would be such a great option. Like, hey, we can use those smokes, we can use asphyxiating bolts, the flame arrows to drive people out of spots. There's no Lamai. We don't have to worry about it being caught. But I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with his flashbangs. Again, I feel like he's almost like a casualty of the previous utility meta.
Yeah.
Whereas like you lose your flashes and all of a sudden you're not really seen as so viable anymore. But like in the context of the current meta, right, he's can still be pretty decent. I'm kind of torn. I almost want to put him in above average because he does have utility. He does have good utility. Like it's very strong. But it's just like we don't see a lot of his play, sadly.
I know. I'm thinking I'm gonna lean towards average with him for now. My thought process is this as well: is his gun itself, the para, it's alright. Low fire rate, which isn't really super.
Low fire rate, high damage.
High damage is the nice part.
You really got to hit your shots, of course. But
yeah, the M249 is kind of a meme. Like, you're really not running that seriously. So yeah, you're running the para. The pistol is whatever. I mean, pistols don't really matter in kits anyways most of the time. The hard breach gadget, like maybe you can get use out of it on hatches. But on walls, typically, you're already going to have an ace or a Hibana or a thermite, so, like, is it really going to help you that much horizontally? Unless there's, again, like, a very specific thing that you want to use it for. Like, in the hands of a really good player, like, a really good Capital player, when Wamaya isn't in play, like, he's above average, maybe even borderline OP. But I think in your typical comp team, I feel like he slots into average right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's a pretty decent option for average right now. I would definitely, like you were saying with Bandit, maybe want to revisit him later. But right now, I guess he's just because of his play rate, like his decreasing play rate. I guess he's sort of average. Although, like I said, I'm not quite sure if it's reflective of the current meta or not. But he's definitely, he's not like the most. I mean, I guess teams have not been finding the most use out of him. So I guess he's sort of average in that sense. He's not amazing. He's not terrible. So definition of average.
So next up,
we have your favorite operator.
Yes, Caviera.
We're waiting for this moment.
Yes, I mean it's pretty obvious throwing tier with Caviera. In a competitive setting, if you're running Caviera, at the very least you can make it seem like you care and run Vigil. Let's be real here. It's just terrible guns, right? I mean, the SMG is a paintball gun, the shotgun is a shotgun. So enough to say about that. The pistol can work if you're landing your shots, but it can be very iffy on when those shots are landing. I don't know, that pistol just feels weird when you shoot it. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It just doesn't seem to land where you're aiming all the time. And yeah, that silent step gadget, the only thing it really helps against is Jackal. Which, again, Jackal right now isn't in a super great place. So, like, yeah, throwing tier. Oh, I have impacts to make my own rotate. I don't even know what her other secondary gadget is. Beepers?
Yeah, I think it's beepers now.
So, like, what are you bringing to the team that any other operator could not bring you? Oh, you want a strong roam presence? Bring Vigil. He can distract drones, which are a huge part of the comp game. You know, you want rotates? Again, Vigil. He has his own impacts. Yeah. Like, Oryx can jump up through hatches, for God's sake. What?
Like, obviously her gadget being able to locate, where the attackers are is in a vacuum. It seems super good, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you have to risk your neck for those kills. You need to leave someone who's injured who can still give communication to his teammates where you are. It is, unless they are actively pushing by themselves and they have misdroned you, because no one would sensibly push a cav 1-on-1. Like, you're not really ever going to get, you're never going to get that off. So, like, your gadget is all resorted to secondary gadget, and it's like you can have anyone else bring impacts, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's super dependent.
Have anyone else bring beepers.
Yeah, it's super dependent on the attacker. It's just making a mistake. I mean, probably more so than almost any operator in the game at this point, where it's just you need them to make a horrible misplay, like this Ashe is crouch walking on the other side of the map with no one droning her. It's just, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Clash. Oh, let me hear your thoughts on this one.
One could argue that she's somewhat in the throwing tier, but I would say she's probably a comfortable niche pick.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, there is situations where some teams would prefer to have a clash. Like if they're going to run an anchor setup on a site that's very hard to contest, internally. If there's a lot of hard walls and there's nothing really to enter on, there's like one or two doorways, or maybe just like a single main breach. You could justify bringing a clash, and if you have like a Jaeger, even a Wamai too, you can keep her up and keep her pretty safe. And obviously, she does a ton of damage over time if you don't take her out quickly and you're on top, pushing her actively.
Yeah.
If you the longer the clash stays up, the more it punishes your team. But like obviously Clash as well has a shield, is vulnerable to vertical play, and if she's one of the remaining defenders up, like one of two or the last one, she's in a very bad situation and can't really have the greatest clutching potential. So like, of course, utility being just a shield again as well.
Yeah, you have impacts,
but like Blitz, sadly, where the Blitz is like you don't get a lot of actual ability to take people out or neutralize them. The Clash has a decent range with her electrostatic shocks or whatever. Like if you're near her, she can if she sees you almost, like unless it's like really far away, she can basically get some damage off on you, slow you down, ping. And obviously she's played in a defensive sense where like the Blitz needs to be activated by trying to clear roamers and stuff.
Yep.
A lot harder to do with a shield than just playing the shield as a shield and just being pretty stationary and giving intel. So I think Clash is, I guess, a pretty solid niche pick.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, on a map like Oregon, right, she can be really strong. You were talking about, maps with limited vertical, lots of hard walls, narrow doorways, that type of thing. Like she can be decent on Oregon. If your team has played around her before and has something in mind. But if you take her to somewhere like Coastline, I mean, what are you doing? You're gonna get banged through a softwall. That's the gist of it.
You're gonna get shot from any of the open areas.
Yeah, you're gonna get shot from the skylight.
Expose yourself anywhere on second floor besides like in the site. Or you're gonna get shot from some opening or courtyard or a window. Like, yeah,
it's just not the play on most maps. Doc is interesting.
Doc is tough.
Doc,
Remember, teams used to bring him. They would be like, "Hey, you're promoted to Doc. Go and get some kills." But obviously, attacks and just
ACOG.
coordination in general has gotten a lot better in the past year or two. It's very hard to just kind of roam with Doc and sensibly
makes so much
rely
noise
on
now.
a spawn peak. Like in that sense, it's almost like Cav, where it's like, hey, we're just taking this guy because he wants to bring him and he wants to like get a frag. But it's like there's a lot of better roamers. There's a lot of better options. I don't think he's a throwing tier though.
He's definitely not throwing.
Obviously, he can heal himself and he can heal his teammates. So it seems pretty decent.
I could even argue putting him above niche. I could argue putting him in situational. Honestly, I don't think he's average for sure. I mean, there's definitely better defenders to bring. But in an anchor role with specific things in mind, he can heal up, like, I don't know, if there's someone, like, maybe you have someone on yellow stairs who's taking a lot of nades on consulate, right? Like, you have a Jaeger there or whatever who's trying to juggle and stuff. Maybe he eats some flak from a grenade and doesn't quite die. Like, he has his uses in those kind of scenarios where it's someone in a very tight position and you want to support them in a way where you can't directly support them with your gun. He has a use in that sense. And his gun, like the MP5, you don't have the ACOG on him anymore. Rook still has it, but Doc does not. So you don't have angled. So it's, you're not like getting that little short ADS boost. And the gun itself is kind of a pea shooter. I mean, if you're not hitting heads, you're probably going to lose the gunfight to the assault rifle shooting back at you.
Yeah.
So I'm like... Also, he doesn't have deployable anymore, does he?
No, he does not. He
so,
only
like...
in VP. I almost want to put him in niche now.
I might put him in niche now. Yeah.
Like you don't see him played much of any, in any really games anymore. It's just like, his play rate's gone to 0. He doesn't have utility really besides stims. And like you said, stims, like if you have a very, very specific use for the stims, it could be viable, but that almost, that's like you have a very, very specific use for an alibi shield or something. It's pretty niche now, sadly.
It's funny.
He doesn't have that roaming potential, and
you definitely can't roam with him anymore like you used to. I mean, he's, three armor, the days of the 3 armor roamer are done in competitive. All right, you're not going to have Doc running around head sniping you with an ACOG. Like, just not going to happen anymore. But
people are not going to peek the dumb angles they used to. Like, everyone's so centric on,
staying alive
kill and opening death. No one wants to be that first person dead. They're not going to stick their neck out for a kill they don't need to get, or a window they don't need to
exactly. In killing Doc, what does it do? Oh, you take a couple stims off the board for the defender. Stims that might not have gotten used anyways. Like, it's just not worth it. You're going to hear him stomping around the map. And again, like, it's funny because a couple seasons ago, I would have even put him in average tier, but now he's fallen off pretty hard.
Yeah, I agree.
So, next up on the list is Dokkaebi. This is an interesting one. I'm leaning towards situational, but let's hear what you have on this one.
She can. There's definitely a good argument for situational, right? Because she's not brought a lot. Teams have gotten a lot more efficient with the roam clear. They don't need to rely on a doke call to really locate people or flush them out early. She does have nades. I think the nades are.
I think the
strong.
Nades are what save her in my eyes.
The nade smoke combo for whatever you need is a very good flex flex option. The calls are good too because the roam clear. The roam clear, and obviously, what was my other point? The fact that, if you use a Dokkaebi call, a logic bomb, it actually forces people off of cams. It forces people
off of angles
to have to reset their phone before they can access cameras again. So, like, that's pretty useful if you're trying to sneak a plant in and you want to, like, force Maestro, someone like him, off his cams.
Or you have to push 90 all on Villa. Something like that, where you don't want them to be able to check the cam as you're pushing up the hall so they don't have the exact timing to swing on you. That kind of thing as well.
Dokkaebi in general, she has a pretty average loadout, I would say. Pretty decent utility, pretty good nades. The nades, the secondary gadget, it's very good. The gun is fine too if you're okay with DMRs. It has a 3.0 sight now.
3X is great.
Snipe people. It's tough. I mean, I want to almost put her in average, but
Yeah.
I can see your point to situational because there's just not a ton of just anchor utility anymore. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't see too many teams bringing a Maestro right now. Maestro's still very good. You should still bring a Maestro.
Yeah.
But no one is bringing Echo anymore, right?
Yeah, Echo's gone.
Echo has really become.
It's almost like you could justify Echo getting back the ability to avoid dope calls because he's just fallen off so hard.
He's very weak
Like,
now when his gadget's visible. You don't need
Yeah.
an IQ. You can spot it out with drones, Z-ping it, remove it. It's very tough. Like he's Echo. I feel like other operators being nerfed in their presence has sort of weakened the argument for why you should bring a Dokkaebi.
Yeah. So
I
we'll
would
throw
say,
probably
yeah,
situational.
I guess situational is fine.
So speaking of Echo, here we are
Echo.
with the lad himself.
I
Echo
would
used to be
still
great to play. Like Echo was getting
above
banned every
average,
map.
Maybe OP.
I think he was OP for a while, but now,
Probably.
I mean,
Now-
situational because of the deployable shield, maybe.
I would say situational, yes, because of deployable shields. There's been some worth of bringing him to assist in a roam essence of like, hey, let's put a I almost said doke.
Yeah.
Let's put a yokai somewhere on the map that we can get intel on to assist our roamer. We can even concuss. We can use the drone ahead for them. But yeah, in general, like his utility for actual denial of plants on site has become
plummeted
to the point that it's almost it's not even worth justifying an Echo over a Maestro at this point.
Or anyone with a nitro cell.
But yeah, like obviously like he looks like a dock in paper, but he does have cameras which are still like a lot better utility than just stims.
Yeah.
So I could still see him as situational.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with him. I think
weak situationally, but still an option.
Yeah, it's better than Alibi. It's better than Doc. It's better than Clash in most situations. Let's put it that way. I think one interesting thing, if they wanted to bring him back as an actual site presence, give his yokais a health pool rather than just a one shot. You have to shoot it maybe 3 times for it to break rather than just once. Because in clutch, then that could potentially, he could clutch up more often with his cams on site rather than, and it's not like before where you just don't see it until it's too late. But now,
because now you can see it on the wall.
You can see it, but obvious. Do I have the time to look up and shoot it? Is now because I can't just one shot it. I have to hit it a couple times, which gives the defender a good window of opportunity.
True.
But that's all theory crafting. I mean, who knows what'll happen with Echo in the future?
Yeah, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. Ella.
There's Ella.
Ella used to be. I mean, Ella was OP tier hands down way back when she was first released. Now
impacts, 50-round gun.
No recoil.
4 gadgets. They would also They would also lower your DPS.
Yes, you couldn't aim. You still can't hear. And then
you couldn't sprint.
Yeah, you couldn't sprint.
You were literally just like stuck in like Clash. Clash's ability. If you were hit by a Grismot, you were so vulnerable. It was insane.
You were dead if you hit one of those because you knew Ella was swinging on that with her 50-round gun, and you were just dead. There was no counterplay to it.
I mean, right now we'll get her now. The present Ella her gun has been almost, people would say, mutilated, just like ridiculously terrible recoil.
Yeah.
It's like 35 bullets maybe? I don't even remember. I have not played Ella in so long, sadly.
I will say this, though. She's better than Cav. I'm leaning towards niche.
She's better than Cav. Yeah, I guess she's niche because she does bring a shield. So, like...
Yep, brings the shield.
There is an option of, like, hey, do we want Alibi or do we want Ella?
In really close quarters fights, both of her guns, the Scorpion and the FL12, are still menaces. In really close fights, they're still really good.
Quarters, for sure. And I guess that's, like, sort of an argument for Alibis. Her gun, obviously, is almost like a laser. There's very little recoil, very high fire rate. It was almost like Ella's gun of the past.
Yeah. Pretty
so
much.
It's kind of, when you're choosing between Alibi and Ella, it's more so, do you prefer the gadget or do you prefer the gun on whoever's playing that operator that's bringing a shield for your lineup?
Exactly.
And that's kind of where the argument ends for both of those operators, sadly. So
yeah. So, one that's been oddly seeing a uptick in play rate recently. Finka. I mean, not on all maps, but on coastline specifically, Finka's been having an uptick in NA, and LATAM runs them all the time. But yeah, NA SSG has been bringing them out a little bit. I think Dark Zero brought them out once, or her, I should say, out once or twice. She's seeing a small uptick, but I can't put her more than niche. I mean, her gadget, majority of the time, is doing more harm than good. You know, throwing off recoil patterns. You get the frags, which is nice, but the sound as well. The sound and the effect on your screen can sometimes be a distraction. You can miss things.
Prevalent,
and yes, smoke is ever present.
When you're in smoke, you take almost twice as much damage.
You die within like 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It's quick.
You just soak up the gas and you get murked. So I don't know. It's tough.
I'm niche or throwing, somewhere between the two.
We saw her at SI 20, I think, 2020 with SSG, like we mentioned. Have you seen her in LATAM play? Because like I haven't.
In LATAM, yeah. She's
zero presence in NA play this season.
Coastline, that's pretty much it. NIP ran her a couple times, Liquid ran her a couple times. All the big players, but pretty much only on Coastline, not on any other maps. And again, I don't know why you'd run her when you have other options, but that's besides the point.
I agree. I don't really see the worth in bringing a Finka, to be honest. I mean,
yeah.
Maybe it's just to give you slightly more health. I'm not sure.
Yeah, which can, like, if they're body shotting, can help.
Drawbacks, it feels like, to your own team using a Finka boost.
Yeah. I mean, if they're body shotting, it's one thing, but most players at that level, again, at the competitive level, aren't body shotting. They're hitting the head, so you're not.
I almost want to still say throwing, but
I know, it's really tough. It's really tough. I'll say throwing. I don't know. I'll agree if you want to do throwing. I'll agree with that one as well.
I can see throwing. I mean, if we have a lot of, like you said, just depending how the tier looks in itself. If it's very cluttered, we could see her as niche because, like we said, we've seen her be played before, but
yeah,
she almost feels like throwing.
Yeah,
it's like, why would you ever want to have a Finka on your team?
Yeah, you know what's interesting too is we're seeing. I mean, this tier list is looking more like a hierarchy, like a pyramid, than anything so far. So this is really interesting to see.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting for sure.
So next up, Frost
might be another addition to the niche tier.
Yeah,
simply because of her shield and yeah,
and secondary shotgun.
Yeah, the secondary shotgun is very nice too. But yeah, just you don't really justify the gadget anymore. 1.5 people like, so like I guess she's somewhat more preferable than an Alibi or Ella, but
slow fire rate guns on defenders though are death. I mean that right there really knocks her back a good bit. It's like it's like the equivalent of using the UMP on Castle Pulse. It really knocks you back as a defender in terms of being able to take engagements. On attackers, it doesn't matter as much because with the assault rifles, they typically deal higher damage per shot. It's not as big of a deal. But on the defensive side, I think that fire rate really just it's tough to deal with.
The gun, I guess, is not the greatest, even with a 1.5. That's pretty true. And then, like we said, the gadget is, I don't know if it's as unpreferable as the Prismas. I mean, people have still seen usage for frost mats.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the meme about a week ago of Citizen falling in a frost mat, and it was just all end on Twitter. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, very niche. If you want a shield and if you want a frost mat, you think you can put it in a spot that the attackers might not look, they'll second guess and just vault something and it traps them. Like, obviously, because then that's a down and that's pretty much 20 HP unless you can't retrieve him. So it's pretty decent. Like the obviously the ceiling for it is amazing. Like, hey, you could literally knock someone off the board, but obviously the gadget's so easy to spot. It's stationary.
Yeah.
Can be exposed.
Only way you're getting away with it to actually catch someone is like a 6th pick, because if they see that in your operator lineup and instantly the red flags are going, and if you're jumping through a window, you're looking down for it every time now. So
also, I just realized there's the old and new Tachanka on this list.
Oh yeah, huh? Well, we'll pretend,
throw him. We'll pretend there, old.
We'll actually do both versions of the Tachanka, because why not?
Why not?
Fuse. Fuse. He's not quite niche. I think he's situational right now. AK-12 can clear sight from above really effectively, but if they're playing a top 4 sight, being able to put it on the window is generally not going to happen. Defender's just going to spray it, right? So if your whole plan is, oh, we're getting above them, Fuse can work really well. And again, the AK-12 is a really strong gun. You have smoke grenades, or hard breach gadget, whichever, which both can have their, again, niche uses.
Actually, I think he lost the smoke, so it's hard breach or breach charges now.
Oh, God. Okay, all right. Unfortunately, not having the smokes, that does weaken him a little bit. The smokes made him, a bit more viable. Hard breach gadget, I mean, clubhouse basement attack if you're going into kitchen. that's about it.
Like consulate garage if you want to open the bathroom hatch.
Yeah, consulate garage. Like, there's not a ton of uses, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah. I liked your argument for situational because I think he could be a very strong utility clear for site. He has 4. You can place them in like every corner of the site,
and they just blow up everything. Like,
you could also time it if you wanted to go for a plant, but it's weird because, like you said, losing the smokes hurts him. His gun is very strong, which is nice.
Yeah,
it can keep him alive for 3 armor. He can soak up a bit of damage somehow.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Like, he almost feels again like a casualty of the utility meta, and it's like now that it's gone, you don't really, really want to bring a fuse. You're not worried about querying site utility a lot. I almost want to put him in niche, but like
he's definitely not
situational.
He's definitely not as bad as like Blackbeard or something like that. That's kind of what's saving him from there for me.
I guess
I would throw him situational. I think because you can bring him on, a decent number of maps. Let's put it that way. So like,
that's true. He has flexibility on a few maps.
Definitely there's operators who are better who can do his job just as well. Like, and that's
if you
I
want
think
him on cafe. I guess it could be an option too.
Yep.
If it's not a top 4, you can fuse down below.
And coastline, if they're in kitchen, you can fuse all of kitchen.
That's true. Yeah.
You have
actually. He has some viableness. That's true.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say situational for him for now. If this was like a season ago, I could have said average because of having a clear utility, but situational right now.
And speaking of his comrade Glaz, there,
Glaz
is. I mean, when he was at his worst,
he was OP at his worst.
Yeah, at his worst, or I guess technically at his best, he was OP.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like 2 seasons ago when his actual thermal could not actually activate until like 2 seconds.
He was throwing tier then. He was definitely throwing tier.
He has seen a lot of. He's been
ups and down. He has literally been in almost every position.
He's been
in
his limelight and he's been in his low light. I think now he's pretty not niche situational. Sorry, I think he's pretty niche now.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there.
You don't see smoke plants are just not in anymore. Maestro and
his whole gadget revolves around seeing through smokes. So like, you know,
it's tough to see around smokes and just like it's not really a weak semi-auto gun.
Yeah, you can't enter with them effectively because of that scope.
Yeah.
The frag grenades can be nice, but again, his whole gadget revolves around smoke, so you're kind of giving that side of him up then. So
you're just bringing him for he's actually like he's not even if you're not bringing smokes on him, it's almost not worth bringing him because you're not even using his gadget. Like then it's almost throwing.
If I really want nades, I can run Iana. I can run Sledge. I can whoever Dokubi even Goyo. So Goyo is another one who's kind of been all over the place. I mean, it's hard to place him right now. He's
a 3-shield Goyo is
above average or OP. Yeah. Now he's either above average or average, and it's really tough for me to place him.
I would say average.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Nitro's nice, good gun.
Vector.
2 shields is still pretty. It's viable. Like you can run 2 shields, but you don't have the strong ADSs of the past. You don't have a ton of Lamai play anymore. At least you can't really bring like in NA comp. He gets banned a lot of Lamai still, and it basically means like it is very tough to hold any sort of utility on site or expect it to survive long.
Mm-hmm.
I would say he's sort of average just because the shields obviously once they're gone, his utility is out. They can soak up, some Ash rounds. They can soak up some utility on the attack. and then after that, he's basically just a gun. But he's like his utility itself is not terrible. When it detonates, it burns 15 seconds. They can't traverse through the flames really without taking substantial damage. But I don't, he still has some use.
Yeah.
I'm even looking on his play rate in the past season. He has like a 30% play rate. Like he still has found viableness and presence in competitive play. Just not like he used to be, obviously, because now he's sort of balanced in a sense. He no longer has 3 shields.
Yeah, so I'm thinking average, right?
Yeah, I think average is pretty fair for him.
A couple seasons ago, above average, borderline OP, but now average.
Yep.
Gridlock.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna say situational, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I suppose situational would be pretty fair for her. Guns are fine. Smokes are pretty decent. Like you don't complain when you have the smokes available on an operator. You don't see as much smoke plants like we mentioned. You don't see a ton of plants in general going down a lot. It's most of the time it's pretty much a won and lost by the opening pick, and you carry that advantage now in competitive play. But obviously, smokes having that plan B option of being able to just cut off lines of sight and get a plant down definitely never hurts. Mm-hmm. The flank utility,
iffy.
Before, yeah, iffy for sure. Like Nomad was definitely the more preferable option. She would, teams on Cafe before would be like, hey, let's bring a grid because Nomad air jabs are hard to place on Cafe. You could throw the gridlock tracks on stairs and they will spread and cover the entire staircase. Like we've obviously with now Zero being available and the fact that teams are, Nomads are not just all reliable, right? If you're not around to hear a Nomad air jab go off, it has no use for you. So like there's still teams have still relied on flank drones. They still relied on
and I would say the same thing goes for gridlock there, right? Like if no one's around to hear them shooting those or punching those, then what's it doing for you?
I almost want to put her in niche now because she just has no play rate really anymore. But
she really, I will say, I think one thing that kind of saves her because it gives her a little more flexibility is her tracks do really well on site. If you get to the point where you're clearing utility and stuff and trying to execute a plant, her tracks I think are better than Nomad's air jabs in that situation. Because they deploy quicker, you don't have to you just throw them and forget. It's not like Nomad where you have to switch to the underbarrel launcher, launch it, reload, switch back or whatever. I think for me at least, I'm leaning towards situational because you can just throw them in spam site. Post plant, they're really strong. But as an actual flank watch, I'm still gonna want flank drones. But then again, the same can be said for Zero. The same can be said for Nomad. So, because the way I'm looking at it, right? I'm looking ahead. I'm leaning towards Nomad and average, and then Zero and situational.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, well, is Gridlock that much better or worse than Zero? Probably not.
Yeah. I don't know if she's much better or worse than Zero. Obviously, they're not. Both their gadgets inherently are not strong at all. Mm-hmm. Not really great. It just depends on how you want to play around them, I suppose. So, I guess an argument can be made for situational. I'm okay with that.
We'll go there for now, and we can always shift it.
Yeah.
Hibana. I'm going to come out and say OP to you right now with her ability to use 2 pellets at a time on hatches, 4 for walls, whatever, or you could still use 6 at a time. She's basically ace at this point. Her gun, the Type 89, the 20-bolt mag can hurt, but if you know how to use it as a gun, it's probably one of the best guns in the game if you know how to use it. You have the bearing secondary, so you have a reliable secondary option as well. Flashes to clear utility. You just have so much ability now to get hatches with just her. Before impact tricking was a problem. Well, not anymore. Impact tricking against a Hibana is just burning your own impacts now.
Yeah, I agree. I know we used to talk about in the past that Hibana was almost the perfect operator. Like she could do pretty much everything. You could You could bring flashes. You could even bring breach charges. He has that option too.
Yep.
For
if you want the soft breach.
She's a very strong secondary, like you mentioned, and one of the few SMGs, machine pistols, whatever. The gun is fine. Has a normal ACOG. The mag is weak, obviously, only 20, but still a high damage gun. Like you can pretty much still drop someone with that mag, no problem. I think she'd be OP now. The gadget change, we've seen it so much more Hibana bans in general.
Yeah,
because she ruins, like you said, impact tricking.
Yeah,
she can reduce the amount of pellets she could use before, and maneuver that and to be able to actually open pretty much all that they need, like an attack will need. Like, hey, we can use 4 for this hatch. We could use 6 for this wall and make it like a crouch or prone angle to get in, or even just like a line of sight. You can use 2 for that sense too. So much more flexibility with the operator in general for such a small change. It's really just made Hibana so prevalent,
really strong, especially on maps like Clubhouse.
So
yeah, Clubhouse, Villa, Cafe, those kind of maps. She can tear with those maps. Iana. So I don't know. Maybe this is my first controversial one, but maybe you'll agree. I want to put her in above average right now. Personally, she essentially presents you with extra drones on the attacking side. So, your drone got shot. Oh, we'll send in an Iana hologram. Looking ahead against a Rooney, she's a very effective counter for that. You can run right through the gates with them, and you have infinite of them again. Frag grenades, G36C with 2x, I think it gets, right?
Yep.
Angle grip. So her fragging potential is strong. Because the frag grenades that she can clear, bandit batteries if you nade up and over a wall. You can nade from underneath if you know how to use her. She can support her team well, and it synergizes well in almost any lineup where it's very easy to just bring in Iana and use her. It's not like Capitao where you need to have it planned out to know how to use it. Iana you can generally bring in and use her gadget in most circumstances. So I'm leaning towards above average, but I want to hear if you're saying average or even lower.
Me personally, I feel like she's sort of average, and I mean I agree with you in the sense that her kit is very nice. There's nothing to complain about having frag grenades, having a decently strong gun with angled grip with a good optic. Her gadget also is pretty good. I think the reason a lot of teams overlook her is just the fact that, when her gadget gets shot or it's used, to clear something, it has, I think, like a 30-second
Yes, recharge. It does have a bit of
it's not cooldown. It is infinite because that it keeps coming back, but you still have only like, not a ton, but still like a couple opportunities to really use it. I think the problem with Iana is, not a problem necessarily, but the downfall of her more so is, she has a great fragging kit, but you use Iana to drone your teammates.
To support,
She's used in a support essence or a support role, even though her kit is so suitable for her to be an entry. She doesn't have soft breach really besides the nades. Like she can't, she doesn't have breach charges. You're not going to use her to open up floors or anything. It's just weird. I almost feel like it's somewhat hard to synergize her. I mean, she's very easy to use and it's very nice to have her. But like when you're bringing her, it's a question of, do you want her to be an entry? Are you going to drone in at Iana to like have her frag, or are you going to use her in a support sense of like, hey, we're going to just have her fakes or clones go in and clear stuff for us, but then she's not really a great support operator because she can't really use anything besides nades to clear site. I mean, I guess her gadget to clear Rooney gates. But potentially, like when a Rooney comes around, she will see even more play rate. But I almost feel like right now she's average because I don't really justify bringing her all the time over an entry, and I don't justify bringing her a lot over a support.
I think she fits very well as a flex.
Operator. I agree.
Yeah,
she's a good flex. And then there were still like people would still be like, hey, well, I want to bring this for a situational purpose, like a Doke for this purpose, or hey, I want to bring a Capitao now, or hey, maybe we want 3 entry
or something. Too.
She's so good. Like I agree. I'd love to see her played more. It's just right now it's hard to see where she fits in, I guess, in a lineup. Just because there's so many like her just entire, I don't know, essence, I guess, is almost like a counterplay of itself. It's like, hey,
Here's a really great fragging
kit.
kit.
For clearing. Yeah, like her utility is so good for clearing and just supporting your teammates, but her kit is all geared towards an entry operator. Yeah. So it's just really weird.
Yeah.
Super strong, super flexible. Just I don't know.
Yeah. All right, we'll throw her in average for now, and then that's one of those that we'll definitely revisit if we're finding our above average tier isn't quite fleshed out enough. Luckily, we have a lot of strong ops still coming up. It seems like alphabetically, a lot of the weaker ones were early, which is interesting.
Yeah, apparently. I don't know how
IQ. So.
IQ. IQ is weird, man.
IQ is very weird. IQ is
she's like almost in that Ayana section of like, very strong entry guns, very strong entry kit.
But you need her to stay alive.
Recharges too. And like you can actually have some sort of soft breach presence with the IQ, but
I think
her gadget, no teams really rely on an IQ to, you have yellow pings, you have Z pings. You don't need to rely on an IQ to like go underneath and find the specific spot.
Yep.
You don't have to like second guess where you're going to nade or where you're going to use your ash round. Intel is so easy to come by now. I mean, Valkyrie's presence, I feel like in general, still makes her somewhat viable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of teams now are running Valk. There's not really a need for Echo. Teams have sort of not veered away from Maestro, but they started to just slowly kind of work them out on like a site or two because you're like, hey, I can use Valkyrie. I can hide these cameras, and you can't really rely on ADSs or Omais to save equalize anymore.
Echo isn't Echo anymore. He's very easy to counter his cameras. So, like,
weird.
You have the rise of Cade as well with his electric claws going in areas where they can't be shot from underneath or above. So, like that side of her, because she was very good at removing electro claws, where operators like Zofia or Buck might struggle because it's hard to see those when you're just looking up through the floor. But now with teams getting creative on a lot of maps and being able to place them in spots where you can't really see them or you can't shoot them, I'm almost leaning towards situational, maybe average because of the G8 angles.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's so tough.
I think she doesn't have frags. If she got frags back, I'd be like average. Lock her in right there, right? Because frag grenades always are an instant bump for an operator. But I'm almost leaning towards situational right now. I'm not sure.
I also kind of agree. Situational, I feel like, is sort of landing spot as of right now, I guess.
So
and we have Jackal.
Jackal is another really interesting on Moss, and I keep saying that, but like this last three has been really tough, right? These three.
Yeah.
God.
He's weird because his gadget's very strong.
Yeah.
In a ranked standpoint, his presence is insane, mainly because of his ban rate, but
yeah.
When you have a Jackal on the board and you can't rely on effective droning or just efficient droning more so. A Jackal really helps speed that up. He turns on his gadget. Does he see any footprints, any presence of defenders nearby? No. Okay, he can immediately move up. He can immediately motion people to start taking map control. Like his gadget itself is super strong. It's like almost as strong as Ayana. You can just find that. You can find the gaps, and you have. It's like an additional drone, basically, or even a more efficient drone to like be able to see tracks, any sort of footprints, whatever. But again, like even with a strong kit as well, his guns have been very, very what is the word? Preferred, I guess. Like everyone loves to use his guns, the C7, the PDW, even smokes as well. But it's like
smokes. You have the secondary shotgun, so in an absolute pinch, you can do verticals.
Oh man.
Situational or average? I mean, it's somewhere in between those.
I mean, his gadget is sort of along the line of IQ in a sense, in terms of like usefulness, right? Because if you're relying on droning, if you have good droning, you don't need a Jackal, but a Jackal does speed some stuff up for you when you need him. And I mean, his kit is as strong as Ayana's. Smokes and frags are pretty comparable.
Yep.
Has a secondary shotgun, which is more soft reach potential, very strong weapons.
I'm leaning towards average, only because he's easier plug and play than IQ.
I agree.
IQ requires a little bit more, coordination, but Jackal is very plug and play. He's like Iana. You can plug them in, and they can get a job done, majority
very
of the
efficiently.
time.
Because their gadgets are very strong for what they do. It's just a question of, do you need their gadgets?
Yeah, is there something that you need more in the lineup?
It's like, why do you necessarily need them? You don't need them all the time, clearly, but like, do you have a good reason to bring them? And if you do, then they're very strong and they do, I guess, synergize well in the lineup. But it's just a question of like, hey, when do you need them? Because you don't need them too often, but if called upon, they can be very, very strong.
So next up is Jaeger. I'm just gonna come out and say above average, not OP, definitely better than average. 416C is a menace of a gun, probably my favorite defender gun. Barbed wire you can drop in almost any setup usefully. His ADS is, again, you can drop in almost any setup and have an effect. Because his gadget is generally just drop and set and forget, you can go and he makes a very strong roamer as well. So I'm saying above average. What do you think?
It's weird because Jaeger's utility, as we know, is one of a kind. Besides like Lamai,
who got
nerfed too. So it's kind of weird how they're sort of placed. But there's an argument I see for OP just because he still is broad on almost every site.
Yeah,
he's still almost like a must-have. It's a weakened ADS is still better than no ADS in a sense. Like just having the ability to catch one flash or one nade that could save your life or let you know like, hey, they're going to start clearing this. I think his impact is still there and it's still prevalent in like every round that's played. And we had the argument with Iana of like, hey, his kit doesn't really match his purpose. I mean, his 416, like you said, is super strong. He's 2-2 now instead of 3-speed, but still 2-2
still works as a roamer. Yeah,
and it's like, you put his gadgets on site. He has a strong gun. Why not have him roam? And he's a very good roamer because he can take gunfights and drop attackers. He's one of the strongest defender guns in the game. So it's tough. It's very tough. I almost want to still put him in like the OP range just because I feel like his gadget is second to none.
Yeah,
but like I still the nerf, like you said, gives me reason to consider him an above average and not like an insta-lock OP. But like I don't know, unless I think if like another defender operator came out that was sort of like Jaeger, maybe like a Rooney. If a Rooney starts becoming really prevalent when she's around, and you see a reason to not run Jaeger because you can put the Roonies on doorways and they have to throw them through to like contest shields and stuff, then I could see Jaeger not being the most useful anymore. But I think right now he's still sort of saved because there's just not really any other option like him, I guess.
So,
Kaid
is above average for me. I think the TCSG kind of sucks now, but you can still use it. The AUG is alright. Again, nothing to write home about, but it's better than nothing. C4, which is great. C4s on defenders, especially on anchors, is really good because they can deny plants very effectively.
Absolutely.
And then those electric claws, you can just do so much with them. You can deny up to 6 walls if they're all connected like that, because you can deny 3 walls at a time, or you can tuck them in corners and stuff where the attackers can't get them from underneath or above, and effectively deny a wall permanently unless they have a Cali or a Thatcher.
Also hatches, like he's the only
hatches too. Only one can protect hatches. Yep, you're right.
Unlike Bandit, unlike Mute, he's very flexible, very dynamic. His utility is, it's probably the best quote unquote wall denial because it's not placed in an obvious spot like a Mute or a Bandit. It's smaller. It's hard to reach.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you need to have utility to take it out. Like you can never rely on being able to shoot it off or just poke at it. Or like be able to just find it. Like you can be tucked in strong positions, like you said. So I think Kaid is definitely an above average pick. for sure.
Yeah.
Just like he's probably just the best Walden out right now at this point.
On to Callie. Callie, especially with her sniper knife, even before she was niche, and she's still niche for me. I don't really see her getting picked. Even when Thatcher's banned, Maverick's banned, you're just gonna remove utility going vertical then. Like, that's all. If your team really struggles at doing vertical play, then yeah, I guess you go Callie. But you should really just learn how to do it and suck it up, because Callie as an operator isn't strong, especially with the change to her sniper now.
Yeah, I think she's probably a safe niche pick. There's even the nerf to her gun now, technically, that affects how she can take down 2 or 3 armors. It's just like there's just less. Yeah, there's just less reason to even bring her. Like, she's not good to take out operators, and she's not good to really open up the wall, like you mentioned. If you're bringing a Callie, I mean, you give up a lot too, because you don't really have a strong option to really enter the map.
Yeah,
Callie's kind of forced to be always with the hard breacher, because like she's not really going to be able to enter on her own. She can't really enter in general unless you're really comfortable with the secondary weapon. So it's like you're bringing her simply to accomplish one job, but then after that, you can't send her off like Thatcher or Maverick to go and actually assist elsewhere. Maverick with nades, Thatcher with more EMPs or a strong gun. She's just very weak right now. So,
Capcan. Capcan's kind of like Frost. I think he's niched here, not because of his utility, right? Like, he doesn't have the shield, or I don't know. Does he have a shield? Either way, you're running. No, he has impacts and nitro. Impacts and nitro. So you're running them with the nitro cell, which is decent. But, like, all right, yeah, so you don't have a secondary shotgun. You don't have a shield. But his traps are generally more effective than Frost's are. So I'm probably going to say niche. Not throwing tier. Like,
not throwing,
hitting an attacker for 40 damage when they're not paying attention, and you get 5 of them, it can be effective. It can stop those late round sight rushes when, teams are just throwing themselves through doorways. Or early round too, if they're not doing their diligence on clearing. You can catch an Ashe who's just walking forward, who's focused on what's ahead of them and not directly in front of them.
I agree.
So, yeah, I'm going to say niche. Not throwing, though.
Not throwing, but niche for sure. And then there's Legion.
Legion. I think you're going to disagree because you don't like playing them. I'm going to say average.
I mean, I don't like playing them in general, but I do see the argument for average. I agree with you in that sense. Like, impacts.
Yep.
Decent weapon. He lost his 1.5. Oh no, he's nerfed.
Leviathan skin.
Yeah, Leviathan skin is the buff for Legion. His gadget's still pretty useful.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good lurker. He's 2-speed with impacts. Can roam. Can lurk. Can play sight. His gadgets are intel. Even if you don't, before you used to have the symbol, the icon, wherever they were placed. So you could instantly know which one of your...
Before he was almost above average.
But yeah. Like his gadget's still decent intel to have on sights.
And you can stop a plant if they're hitting sight really late in the round. They're waiting until the last 5-10 seconds to execute. If that planter comes running through that doorway, he hits that goo mine. He can't plant. And that can actually be a really big deal. That can change a round in an instant. Which having that ability while also still just generally helping your team throughout the course of the round is pretty nice. Pretty nice to have.
I completely agree. Yeah. And then we have Lion.
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 I think
the Lion of year 2 would be a no question OP.
But now situational, I'm thinking.
I would say situational, I agree.
Still a really nice gun. Can help the team, generally speaking. He's kind of like Dokkaebi, where, global gadgets, right? So they generally are always going to be, except for Finka. Finka, screw you, Finka. But Dokkaebi, like, again, you just press a button and it helps your team. It's not too difficult. You have flashes to clear and a decent gun. And then once you've used all your scans, you can move on to an entry roll with that gun. So I don't know. I think situational. Definitely not niche. Like not
I
as
agree.
not as bad as Blackbeard, not as bad as Cali, not as bad as Glaz.
Because I mean, there's a whole map. Coastline. Everyone's like, "Hey, that's a lion map."
Yeah.
You can use it to really facilitate fast pushes.
Hmm.
It's global, like you mentioned. It, in general, slows down defenders. It pings them if they move. Like that's not bad to
Yeah.
have. And strong, like decent kit. LMG with a 2.5 and decent damage. Flashbangs too. I think even a secondary hard breach. Flashbangs and second hard breach, which some flexibility there. You have a weird purpose for a secondary hard breach, sure, but most of the time you'll have flashes.
Hmm.
I think he's pretty decent.
Yeah. Maestro.
He's in a good state for being a global operator.
Yeah, I think so. They actually did a really good job with reducing the impact of global abilities. I will say
them from
that
the chaos
people were really concerned about global abilities, and I think they did a really good job of putting them in a good place. Like situational, right? Situational average is the ideal place for most operators. If you can bring operators into that range, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
Maestro. I'm gonna say above average right now, but I'm
I would
curious.
still say above average.
Yeah.
I think definitely above average because he's replaced Echo.
Yeah.
Essentially, he is now quote unquote like the ideal, site intel.
Yeah.
Anchor intel. Just place an evil eye down. They have to use utility on it. Ash's damage radius also been nerfed. Has been interesting. I don't know if you've seen a lot of it in play, but I've seen people fire Ash rounds and sometimes not be able to
miss
land the
because they're
It's weird. It's something people are gonna have to get used to, and they're gonna have to be a lot more precise with where they fire it. But in terms of Maestro, and of course, like regarding Maestro, he is an 81 bullet LMG on the fence.
Oh my god, that Aldo is brutal. You have impacts
you never want
for
to
crane rotates.
That,
you have the bailiff.
Yep. You have impacts too for tricking.
Yep.
Or making rotates, or whatever.
Whatever. They're flexible. They're really flexible.
He's a very strong operator in general. Not a must-have. If you don't have evil eyes on site, you've probably preferred like an extension or something. You've chosen a different methodology of holding the site. So like he's not like you always need a Maestro that he protects so much stuff, but obviously having him is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like why not bring Maestro?
Yep.
At this point.
So next up is Maverick. I want to lean towards above average or average. I'm not quite sure. He has the frag grenades, which helps.
I would say above average, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because he is the one anti-breach operator that can sort of bypass all anti-breach utility, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's kind of the fail-safe hard breacher, right?
He is the fail-safe hard breacher, yes, exactly.
I mean, that's really all you have to say. Right? He has good guns, decent guns. I wouldn't say they're the best, but they're not the worst for sure. They're better than average. And, I mean, that's quite literally the name of this tier is above average. I think that's kind of where he falls with pretty much most of his kit. He has frags, 2-speed, decent guns, and fail-safe hard breach. He's not going to do the job the best, but he can do the job that any other hard breach can do at any point.
Mm-hmm.
Looking to Malusi, I'm going to say average. Set and forget gadget, nitrocell, so you can roam. MP5 is meh as a gun, but you can make it work.
Interesting.
You don't have the angled anymore, which, so big deal. Although it does for roamers, it can have an impact. It's not as big, but it can affect it. So it is a slight nerf, we'll say. It's not anything like groundbreaking. I don't think she's above average. I'm probably gonna lean towards average with her. But what do you think?
I'm actually pretty curious from your argument. Or I'm actually like fascinated by it. I still feel like in some essence she can almost be OP in a sense of like when Goyo was with 3 utility, he was a menace. He was brought almost all the time. It was like, god dang, you got to use 2 people's or an operator and a half's utility to clear all of them.
Mm.
I mean, Moosies are pretty oppressive, or Banshees.
They are tough to.
You get into them, it's you're stuck. You're like stuck in Clash basically. And if anyone hears that, they know like, hey, you're in radiuses. We know where you are.
Yeah.
It's a utility soaker. It's also just bulletproof because for that fact, and you can place it almost anywhere. It's a passive gadget that doesn't need anyone nearby to activate. And I mean, the operator itself, she's also 3-speed. She has the option of nitro or impacts, which is so strong
for roamers. Yeah,
and for roamers especially. I feel like if she's not OP,
I'll put her above average. I think we'll compromise. Average,
to be honest,
we'll compromise on that one.
And she does get banned a lot too.
She does get banned a lot. I think
not in like high level comp because like people will still.
But in mid and lower level comp, people are afraid of her because I feel like that alone just is like she is still like in a competitive sense, like across the whole spectrum or the whole board, whatever. Just like tough overall to deal with. So. Yeah, I think it's almost like for me it's like oh god, what's it called? The thing where you start sympathizing with your kidnapper. You know what I'm talking about? Like I don't mind playing against her now. Like I can deal with it. When she first came out, it was a pain. I didn't like playing against her ever. She had the T5 and all that. Like she got nerfed slightly a couple times along the way. And it's now like, yeah, she's still really strong, but I can deal with playing against her, if that makes sense. Like it's really weird to explain. So yeah, we'll compromise. So we'll say above average for her.
All right.
Mira. OP. I mean, she lost the 1.5 on the vector. Doesn't matter if you can run her on a site and you're like. I mean, on the viable sites for her. I'm not saying like you're running her on. I don't know. It's hard to even think of sites that she doesn't entirely work on because most sites you can have a spot for at least one of those windows. So I'm gonna say OP for her. She's generally speaking a very good operator in almost any scenario.
Yeah. There's really like a pretty hard argument to make if you're not putting her in OP. She gets banned a lot because the presence of in general, just leaving a mirror up can be devastating. Yeah. Obviously now I think with time and with how comfortable teams get with clearing mirrors, which I mean at this point is getting pretty comfortable.
Yeah, it's getting better.
Like you can justify her starting to fall down a bit.
Above average, yeah. But right now
teams aren't. I mean, I will say this, like I've watched a lot of like the 6 major and stuff. She wasn't getting banned a lot. But also, like, if you weren't banning her, you could pretty much almost guarantee that she would still find her way in at least one of the rounds or in at least some setup. She's not the greatest for every site, but if you leave her on a site that she can be viable on, it's like a whole nother factor you have to deal with.
It's completely round changing when she's in it, and I think it's the easiest way to put it. Monty. So Monty, I would have slotted into maybe even above average with teams who knew how to play him. But now with guard break and stuff, I'm probably dropping him to average or situational.
I was almost about to say niche.
Almost even niche. Yeah.
I have not seen a Monty in so long. I don't know. I think teams in general have just not dealt with shields since they got the guard break mechanic. I mean, he has smokes, which is decent, but it's not a threat anymore if a Monty's in front of you and you're like worried, like, oh shit, when's this guy gonna peek me? Because like if a Monty's pushing you alone, he can still, now you can take him on. If the Monty's on you 1-on-1, you can punch him, bust his, guard break, activate it, and shoot him down.
So, like, or just shoot him.
He requires even more coordination now. Because he can't just walk up into places and be like an anchor, sort of. He actually is somewhat vulnerable if left alone. It requires a teammate to be around him a lot. And I mean, now Malusi's in the game. Like, there's just more and more gadgets.
Yeah, even more counters to him. Yeah.
There's more counters that are just going to slow him down or prevent him from actually accessing points that he could otherwise in the past. So, like, I almost want to say niche, but
I'll go niche. Actually, hearing that argument.
I'm cool with that too, but yeah.
I'll go niche here in that argument because I think you're right. If Bank was still in the pool and stuff, I would have been like situational. But Bank doesn't exist in the pool anymore.
Yeah.
So
I just don't see him anymore, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
People just don't believe in the shields anymore, and I mean, rightfully so, I suppose. So.
Yeah. Now Mozzie, I think Mozzie is a pretty average defender, average or above average, probably average.
Probably average. I agree.
I mean, two really
If you had
great
a super
primaries.
shorty, pretty above average.
Yeah.
Then you can make rotates. And
No, you don't have the shorty anymore, Mer. Mozzie lost the shorty.
Oh yeah, I was saying like when he had.
Oh, when he had it, yeah, he was above average.
He was above average, but now, the pests are good.
Yeah.
People have found ways around pests now though, and obviously the pest itself is sort of just like a deterrent. You don't have to drone it through. You can wait a second and try to clear. I mean, you could still be placed in strong spots that if you have a roamer nearby and you hear them having to move up, you can engage. But pests in general, I think his gadget's like really the good thing about him is like he can take those drones and use it against the attackers. But otherwise, I mean, his nitro's good, his guns are good, but he doesn't have that shotgun. He doesn't have those impacts to be like a standalone roamer.
Yeah.
Anymore, so
he's gonna slot into most defenses relatively easily, but he's not gonna you don't want to bring him in place of someone who has a crucial job like Smoke is really, that's a great way to look at it. He's gonna jive really well with another roamer like Vigil or Jaeger or something. On to Mute. I think Mute is another one that's. I mean, I can't place him higher than Bandit, right? Or can I?
I almost feel like we could.
I know.
I was actually at first I was looking at him sort of in the same lens as Kaid of I mean, this man, he can't get hatches, and his utility obviously has to be placed in a pretty conspicuous or obvious spot.
But he can stop a lot of wall.
It can stop a lot of walls. It can stop drones. It can stop a few. It can stop utility from activating as well. Yep. If you walk up to and try to drone, you can't. If you try to use ionic clones, they get stopped by it. It stops Twitch drones, which not everyone brings Twitch anymore. But if
she were to come back,
zero cams, there's quite a few things that mute jammers can stop. I mean, even before when the global abilities were a menace, you could use a mute and be like, "Hey, stand in the mute," or
Lion,
walk
yeah,
through the mute.
Yeah, Lion
will detect you. Toke will detect you. Yeah. And I mean, he has a shotgun,
which rotates.
Rotates. It's pretty strong close quarters. Yep. SMG-11 is nothing to, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
obviously. It's not
Nitro Cell
too. So I almost wanted to put him in above average, but I
think average. I think average.
Yeah, I can see average though, for sure.
Because if I had to choose between him or Smoke, I'm choosing Smoke every time. Right.
I agree.
So I think that's going to be the difference there, but. Onto Nook, I'm saying throwing tier. I mean, again, very selfish gadget. The nades are nice, but you're using the FMG9. Just extremely selfish of an operator. It doesn't bring anything to a team comp at all. Why am I running a Nook?
The only time I've seen Nook actually be a sort of big brain choice was Consulate Archives. It was one game where Pulse was banned, which we haven't seen a lot of Pulse bans anymore. But Pulse was banned, so if you played Archives, you were really limiting yourself and you were really detrimenting yourself, right? Because you couldn't detect where they are. So they took a Nook and they walked into site and planted in the first 30 seconds because there's no Pulse scanning, and she's not detected by the Maestro or any site utility. So she got into site in a corner where the gadget wasn't facing. She snuck through and passed them at first, and then got to a spot, planted, and all of a sudden it's GG then, because you have 5 attackers up who are playing post plant. It's well, okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I agree. She's pretty throwing tier. Just not enough utility on her. Nades are cool, but
they don't. So it just doesn't. It's not a gadget that supports your team in any.
You're playing
sense.
Cav, where you're kind of hoping for the defenders or someone to miss something, not be checking cams when her gadget's not active, or
exactly
not listening. I mean, obviously. Sound right now in the game is kind of iffy, so she's strong in. I mean, she's not strong, but she's good and okay in rank play. I've seen people use knock and actually
she can work in rank
around
play.
Or trick people up, but she's not really inherently by herself very useful to an attacking op.
Yeah, when you only have 5 operators to choose, you really have the space to run a Nook at the end of the day. Oh yeah, sure, I could run an Amaru, but I don't have the space to run it. I could run a Finka. I don't have the space to run it. It's just not. It's not going to happen most of the time.
Yeah.
Almost all the time. On to Nomad. So I was going to say average tier. I think she's probably the best of the main flank watch trio now, right? Between Zero, Nomad, and Gridlock.
Mhm.
She still has the flashes. She has two workable primaries. Neither of them are outstanding, but they're both workable. They're average. That's all there really is to say about her. It definitely like the most reliable of the flank watches, but you still want flank drones. Like it doesn't completely eliminate the need for that. We've seen it
Mhm.
many times before. So yeah, I'm saying average, but what do you think?
I don't know. Nomad to me seems almost like the best option for flank watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Even
Of
like
the
I almost want to slot her in above average because she is pretty strong. Her role herself can be fulfilled the flank watch just by placing them. Obviously, like you said, if they're placed pretty far away, you're gonna want flank drones. But if you're placing them on like a staircase behind which your push is coming from, like you don't need to necessarily watch that. You'll be able to hear it go off and be like, all right, there's someone behind us. Like,
yeah.
I mean, there's teams I've seen bring her almost every round. She can be banned pretty decently on maps like Coastline and Consulate, even maybe like Villa if you don't want to like 100% deal with her. But like I don't know, she's pretty strong. She has those flashes as well. Her guns are not the greatest, but not terrible, I guess either. I don't know. Nomad's in a.
Yeah, she's
I
an
almost want to
interesting
say
spot.
above average because she kind of like is mostly better than Grid and Zero.
Yeah, yeah.
She's kind of like better than the majority of the utility that you can bring for that flank watch position.
hmm
I mean, you're not really harming your team by bringing her either. Still, like she has flashes, she has
Yeah,
decent
yeah.
guns, she can do stuff. I don't know. I'm in a weird spot with Nomad. Like
I'm in a weird spot too. I totally get your argument for the above average thing. The thing is with her is that there's times where you can't actually lock down the flank in the way you think you can. Think of red stairs on Villa. If you place that air jab at top of red stairs, that defender can still peek red stairs and kill you without ever actually exposing himself to the air jab. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't actually have to push all the way up those stairs. He can peek you over the top of those stairs, never trigger the air jab, and get a double and f off before
yeah,
anyone is able to react.
yeah.
But
That's sort of like an argument against what's it called, flank watch utility as well, because like if no
yeah,
one's on those zero cams or
yeah. If
the
no one's on the
track,
cams or the drones or the
yeah,
tracks,
then like
like yeah,
then anyone can walk up and just like shoot you from behind. But like, I see what you're saying too. Like her gadget's exploitable for sure.
hmm
If you have impacts, you can still get by it.
yeah.
Like,
Her gadget can definitely be finicky. I think of all the flank watches, hers is the most. It can definitely punish you the hardest. Let's put it that way. If you're not prepared for it, because there's times where you're like, oh, this is a perfect air jab, like, and then it just completely backfires and like you just get exposed hardcore.
Mhm.
Um, we'll go above average for now. We don't have enough in that tier, and we can drop her down if we're seeing that like.
Yeah, we'll
I
definitely
don't.
have to do like a TLDR at the end and just look at
Yeah,
all these.
yeah,
And
and
see.
we'll take a look at some trends and stuff we see and see if anyone should slide up or down. Oryx niche tier.
Yeah, I would say niche.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I feel like he's the definition of niche. You have things like the clubhouse, DZ Rome, and stuff. But beyond that, am I gonna run him over Vigil? Am I gonna run him over Mozzie?
Yeah,
No, that's just straight up the answer.
I mean, it's cool that he makes a big rotate with his body, but obviously people don't want to sack health for it.
Yeah,
Even if it's like 5, it's still just like,
climbing up through
rather not.
hatches if a team's crutching on Nomad can work really well. But
That's true.
again, that's super specific. Like it's not gonna happen very often. And if you
Very
see
true.
again, you're thinking comp, you see their 5 operators. So unless they're using their 6 pick on him, then you're gonna be ready for it. You're gonna
Mhm.
have that drone on the armory hatch in clubhouse, for example. Things like that. You're going to have that drone ready. Um, pulse. Either average or above average.
Uh, if that's the case, probably average, to be honest. I don't know.
You were thinking
His gadget,
situational. Interesting.
a little bit. I don't know. He's like before in the past, you'd bring a Pulse and you're like, all right, Pulse is very good. You could put him on the roam. You can, you can obviously deny plant. I feel like as this game has evolved and obviously droning has become a lot more efficient, people have understood like what map control they needed. Even like Nomad being available now, to like you can place them on some of those positions to hold them better. I feel like Pulse has sort of fallen out of grace a little bit. I think Valkyrie 2 has become a lot more prevalent because it's gadgets that everyone can use to look at locations or like, for intel. And the Pulse obviously needs to scan up. And if he's in scanner, he's not really... I mean, he can nitro still. You can put it down nitro, but like... I don't know. Pulse is weird because...
It's tough. It's tough because like... I look at the defenders in situations.
He's not as prevalent anymore either, so like he has some breathing room there, but he's tough. Like his gun's not great.
I definitely think he's better than Echo. He's better than Castle. Is he better than Bandit? Maybe. It definitely depends.
Yeah.
And then you look at average tier. Is he at the level of Mute, Mozzie, Legion, Goyo?
I suppose he could be at the level of them. Yeah. I would still personally feel like I'd rather bring a Mute and have someone else intel and then have him nitro. Like,
I agree with that.
I think Pulse's major worth besides his gadget, which I mean is mobile, but it dies and it rests solely on him. Is like the only other reason you bring him is for that nitro.
That nitro,
like, hey, you have Mozzie now, you have Goyo now, you have even Malusi now. Like you have a lot of operators with more passive gadgets that you can place and have more use out of it. And they're like, obviously they live even if they die, unlike Pulse. I just feel like Pulse has sort of been, I wouldn't say necessarily replaced, but there's just been so many other options now on the board that you don't see Pulse as often.
If you want to play aggressive on defense, I will say Pulse is as good of an option, if not better than Valkyrie at times.
That's true.
But I don't know. We'll go average.
I think average for sure.
Yeah.
Average is definitely very fair for him because he is pretty good still. Like he's still like there's no like direct nerf for him or anything. Like he's still really good.
Yeah.
It's just like if you're playing very aggressive with him, there's still a good argument for Valkyrie, and it's mainly just because like if Pulse dies, his utility is then
dies
done.
with him. Yeah, correct.
And it's like Valkyrie, you have 3 eyes. You can put him in a lot of spots that you'll need with 3 black eyes or just Valkyrie cams. So it's like. You have him, and if she dies, she dies. She has a nitro like him, then it's like, you can there's sort of a more argument for Valkyrie, I guess. But Pulse is still very good. I don't think he's necessarily bad. I just think there's been a lot of other options that have
the game evolves, Yeah. That's how it is. Recruit. So Recruit's technically not pickable, like in comp and stuff. But if he were, he's throwing tier. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. He has no gadget. His loadout is whatever. Like, you have options, but I mean, he's throwing tier, right? I can't possibly justify even running him in a niche role anymore. There's just no situation where I can give up having a full-on gadget with an operator, or an operator with a gadget, just to bring a set of frags and a set of smokes. There's just no reason.
My only argument, if I was even going to consider him for niche, I would almost bump down like Alibi to throwing them. But it's only because when you have Recruit, I mean, well, the one thing is you can't even choose your attachments either, which is very it's just like, hey, do I want to run a red dot and fucking extended barrel? No, but when you have a shield. And you can also
you're looking at the defender side of it. That's
it could be cool. Yeah, for attacker side, he has no purpose for sure. For defender, it's like, hey, if I want a shield and also nitro, like, Recruit would be, and then it would, you'd feel like that one-time opportunity of like maybe I should bring him. But
but because you can't even pick him, it's like
you can't pick him. So he's essentially just out of the tier list. He should just be throwing them in that case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming this was made based around someone who wanted to do like a ranked tier list or something. But whatever.
Like all the operators. Rook is interesting.
Rook, I think, is better than Doc. I want to put Rook in situational because he helps his team from the get-go. And now with Cali being changed too, if a team is running Cali, he is a very strong counterpick to Cali. You still have the ACOG, unlike Doc. I think situational.
Too, like when you have Rook armor and you get naded,
you only get down.
You don't die. So like it's pretty. I mean, it gives you an opportunity.
And with things like nades from below coming a lot more often than they used to.
That's true. Yeah. And like when Jaeger's been nerfed a little bit, it's like, hey, you know, if you want a rook for something and you can't rely on ADSs to keep you alive, like sure. And he has a 2.0, you can use him aggressively.
Yeah.
If you want to like peek and put him in a nice anchor position and have him just, yeah, like literally just peek and just contest angles. But
it's very easy for me. Yeah, it's very easy for me to look at the defenders in niche tier and be like, yeah, Rook is inherently better than all these defenders. And look at the defenders in situational and be like, yeah, he's pretty much on par with Echo at this point, on par with Castle, on par with Bandit. So, yeah, situational makes sense for me.
Yeah.
Sledge, above average for me.
I think above average personally, but I'm curious.
Glad we agree.
Okay.
Nades. The hammer gives you tons of above destruction. Take out castle barricades, take out the banshees, take out maestro cams if you can get close to them if they're on like 90 hull or something like that. You know, you need to remove it after you actually take 90 hull. He's essentially a very good cleanup guy for clearing stuff that you've already secured. So like, again, 90 hull on Villa, right? You've already pushed 90 hull, you've already pushed the defender out of there. He's kind of the cleanup guy so you don't have to waste an Ash charge on it. But yes, nades, his kit, like his weapons, you get SMG-11, which, great. You get the L85, great. You know, they're both very well-rounded, usable guns in almost any scenario. And he, yeah, like I said, he can clear utility. That's the one thing Buck cannot do right now, is Buck really can't clear that utility like that. Unless it's like a Jaeger ADS or something, but in that case, anyone can technically clear it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say above average with Sledge.
I would agree completely.
Smoke, another above average for me. But what do you think?
I agree, above average.
Really, these SAS boys.
Utility denial, very strong. Or sorry, not utility denial, plant denial.
Plant denial, yeah.
Very strong for that option. So I think
rotates, side setup.
Yeah, it's almost a no-brainer.
You have the whole shebang with him. I mean, he just does so much. He still can smoke clip in a lot of areas, so like you don't even have to expose yourself a lot of the time if you know what you're doing. I mean, a strong smoke player is pretty much the foundation of defense. It takes you have to know what you're doing to be that smoke player, but once you learn that, like, you're indispensable to teams. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, for sure.
Old Tachanka.
Unquestionably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're good. Old Tachanka, throwing tier.
Yeah.
That's all you gotta say.
Should we do a countdown on that? But yeah, he is throwing tier.
Yeah, it's just no question. I really don't even want to go into explaining this one, but for anyone who's really curious, I mean, the fact that his only ability essentially forces him to stand still in one place where it's very easy to get underneath him, very easy to get above him.
Nade him out. You don't have to peek into a shield at all.
It's just it's as bad as Caviar on the defensive side. It's just not worth it. Thatcher. Ooh, Thatcher's tough. I know there's some people who would argue above average. I'm gonna say OP still. I'm
still saying OP.
If he's on the board, you should be running him.
Yeah, and he's banned almost all the time. It's the one operator that can let you bypass a ton of utility that you don't necessarily need to clear. Sure, it doesn't destroy them now, but still just being able to disable them for enough time to
get that frag grenade, get that wall open,
destroy them, or like anything, even ADSs and magnets from Womai. Womai will be interesting as well to rate, but he's just, he's all around just the best option for helping to clear walls, for helping to clear utility, for helping to force people out of positions if you need to clear their utility. Whatever you need a Thatcher for, like any sort of electronic, it's just Thatcher. He's just the all-around best option.
Yeah, exactly. Thermite. Ooh, Thermite's an interesting one. Either above average or average right now, right? I mean, he's definitely not OP. Definitely
not OP when you have Ace and Hibana there. I would still almost put him at like above average, but I can see the argument for average. It's weird though. Like, I mean, he's still good on certain maps. Like, I would still bring him on Clubhouse or a map where you want to like open an exterior wall and you're not worried about it getting impact tricked or anything. It's faster than an Ace charge, So like you can get around some bandit tricking if you can place it, like if you can deal with actually maneuvering on the bandit, which is I guess pretty tough. So it's not reliable. But Thermite, I don't. You don't really like. He's not good on consulate.
Yeah.
He's not good on coastline. I wouldn't say he's good on Villa because like there's a lot of on that.
Because I'm just gonna run Ace on that map.
Yeah.
Like that's.
There's a lot of teams will on Villa contest vertically sometimes, like especially like roaming below. You know, kitchen. Like, why would you even bring on kitchen if you're going to try to take master wall? Someone's going to definitely nitro that or impact that.
Yeah, your justifiable uses for them are like cafe, where if you're trying to take bakery wall and you just want a really big hole, that's fair. Or clubhouse if you're taking like exterior walls and you're just trying to make again a really big hole.
Like I don't think he's situational because you can use.
Yeah, definitely not situational.
You can use him on any wall still. He's still like very viable. But it's like, hey, there's these really good options in Hibana and Ace now. So it's like, I don't even want to consider him above average because you most of the time wouldn't really pick him over those, over an Ace or over Hibana. So like, I don't know. If you're feeling average, I'm feeling average as well. But like, I can still see him in above average.
We'll slot him in average. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
He's one of the few operators in the game with a hard breach still, with a primary hard breach gadget. I guess secondary hard breach also.
Yeah.
It's not the most useful, but it could be a reason if you wanted to knock him down. But yeah, Thermite is just, you don't. Flashbangs are good, not end all be all for operators, of course, but like still good. And it's like his gadget is just sort of the game has evolved. I guess is sort of another argument for him. It's like. Now there's Ace. Ace came and Thermite was no longer the de facto, big.
And then Hibana got buffed, so now it's like, Hibana for the hatches and everything. Like, it's
like Hibana for hatches and tricking, Ace for flexibility, opening a lot of walls. That
Maverick as your failsafe to do either of those. Like,
Maverick can still soften and make even larger holes technically than Thermite on vertical walls. So it's like, why would you need a Thermite you don't need to bring a Thermite all the time.
Yeah.
His play rate is actually at the same as Bucks right now, according to Stage 2 US. So, like, it's pretty fair to him at average, I guess, if he's playing the same as a Capital and a Buck. Actually, they're all at 25%.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a pretty good metric, I guess, for them, too.
Let's take a look at Twitch. Oh, situation or niche. I'm almost leaning towards niche right now. But the only thing that might save her is the F2, so I'm not really sure.
F2, she has flashbangs, too. I mean, all around her utility was designed to just clear probably like ADSs, any sort of electronics you can. Soft counter to Mira if you can somehow get the drone in. But that's the problem with Twitch, right?
Can you get that drone in? Exactly.
You use the drone, and if you're using it for roam clearing, you're nullifying the use of the gadget. So it's like you have to weaken your actual intel and ability to gather information where the roamers are by designating her drone to only be used on site. And it's not even a guarantee that her drone makes it to site. I would say almost niche. I can see that it's tough. It's so tough putting
because she has that F2, which is like still a nice gun even with the recoil. Like it still fries defenders, but
it still fries defenders exactly. And it's like,
but everything else she's bringing,
she has no utility for you. Then
yeah, everything else she's just bringing does not help.
You're using the drone to. I mean, if you can get it off and you can open a wall or two, like power to you that you were able to manage that.
Yeah, but is it going to work? Is it going to work twice for you? Probably not. So
it's not like she's super situational. She has like a very specific use, which is kind of the definition of niche in a sense. But like, it's just like, you don't see her a lot, hardly ever now.
Yeah,
and it's like, why bring her? If you have a Thatcher, you're of course bringing Thatcher. If you don't have Thatcher, you're going to bring other options to clear utility.
You're gonna have your Ash and Zolf going underneath, or your Buck, or your Sledge above. Like
at that point, why even bring Twitch to clear or like try to shoot an ADS? You could just use her flashbangs to then burn the ADS. So it's
it's just
her gadget has become basically useless now in competitive play.
Yeah,
so like, she's niche in a sense.
She's like if you took the situation with Ihana and just min-maxed it, right? Where like you just take the fucking F2, which amazing gun, and then you give her the rest of her kit and gadget, which just doesn't really do a whole lot
Her
for that.
gun is like almost the only thing that saves her from throwing, in a sense.
Yeah, really. That's honestly, that's true,
If
100%.
she didn't have a good gun, it's like, why would you even bring Twitch ever? But
Yeah,
it's
no need. No need.
F2 go for her, so
Yeah.
people would still sometimes bring her, I guess.
Yeah.
But not really needed.
On to Valkyrie.
I would
Valkyrie,
say Valkyrie is probably above average.
that's where I was going with it too. Those cams, lots of intel, you can hide them. IQ's falling off, so if a team isn't reacting to the Valkyrie pick, her cams are essentially going to go untouched if you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get aggressive with her. You can put them near sight as well. You can put them anywhere off a site. You can put them outside of the building. Like, you just have so many options. The MPX is a workable gun. You need to hit heads, but at least the fire rate kind of compensates for that. Nitro cell, yeah, I think above average.
I agree. Just, the intel is so useful for defenders.
Mm-hmm.
Like we argued with regarding Pulse, her gadget survives her. You place them in good spots, and if they never find them, especially when teams aren't bringing IQ as much, that's just intel you have for almost the rest of the round.
Yeah.
And Nitro and Decent Gun, Roamer fits a lot of, holes that you need on the fence sometimes when you're bringing the Valkyrie. So I think I think she's just an all around like a good pick, a pretty above average pick.
Yeah, I'm with it.
You have no problem bringing a Valkyrie, and you almost would want to bring a Valkyrie sometimes. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. On to Vigil. Vigil's a tough. I'm debating between situational or average. I'm thinking situational, but I want to hear your thought.
Yeah, I could see the situational pick. I also think he's probably one of the best, like, all-around roamers to bring. Because when you have Vigil, you can run around, you can impact, you can delay droning just by using your gadget. Which, like, in of itself, right, like, the gadget doesn't keep him alive by doing anything, like, it doesn't buff his health or anything like that. It just keeps him alive by not allowing teams to pinpoint where he's at. I think he's somewhat just average because, like, you can still bring him on sites and get worth out of him. He does definitely delay teams' roam clears. I see situational, though, as well. I mean, I guess the playing Vigil really depends on the team in general. Like, if you're a team like TSM, when you're relying on aggressive roams, Vigil almost is kind of like a staple sometimes. Because you just take him, you plug and play him anywhere you want. He has the ability to go around and waste time, delay and evade roam clears. But, like, obviously, he doesn't have utility that goes on site, which is very useful. Like, he doesn't, you bring impacts to him. He doesn't really bring anything for site. But I don't know. I still feel like he's somewhat of an average pick because he's probably a better roamer operator than, like, a Mozzie. Like, he has those impacts to move around. If you're going to use your Nitro to make a rotate with Pulse and Mozzie, then you kind of kill a good portion of their utility, like what they would be used for, which would be trying to deny a plant vertically, like force teams to clear you out when you bring a Mozzie and a Pulse. So, like, I don't know. I still think Vigil's sort of average. I would still bring him more over, like, a Bandit. I would still bring him more over, like, a Rook, although Rook is also pretty decent. But
yeah, he's definitely the best pure roamer, right? Definitely the best pure roamer. But I think the spot for a pure roamer in the defense, it's tough to justify, like when you have Jaeger, when you have Malusi, stuff like that.
You're running like a default setup, you don't see a Vigil.
You have a Valkyrie, you have these defenders who can fill those roles and bring stuff to the rest of the team. But from a pure roamer standpoint, what separates him from Caveira is, again, he just does it so well. His gun is great. You have the SMG.
Yeah, he has a way better kit, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And his gadget prevents him from being seen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like,
which is crucial.
It makes you second guess. In a game like Siege, if you have to second guess something when someone else is determined, or like their mind's concluded, like they know they're going to swing something, or they know they're going to hit you, when you're second guessing that, like, that is life and death sometimes. Like, having to decide, like, is this Vigil actually in this room, or is he downstairs? Like, where is he in this room? We don't know. We can't confidently tell someone to walk in and pre-fire this and that. So, like, yeah.
So, Wamai. I'm leaning towards situational tier now. Situational
Damn.
or average. I mean, him not having that shield really can make it tough at times. Because there's times where you still need a shield in that spot, and if you don't have it,
Mhm.
it's
I
tough
would.
because I do want to say average, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
I would still. I still think personally. I mean, I don't want to go off of ban rates and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like he still has a huge presence in comp just because he gets
Mm-hmm.
banned quite a bit by like NA teams. I haven't really seen the
Yeah,
metrics in other
I've
regions.
been looking at the other regions for that.
But like his utility, yeah, he loses the shield. That's rough for him. He still has a utility that is close to Jaeger.
Yeah,
Not
you
necessarily
get
the
four
same
of them,
thing.
so you're
Yeah,
denying essentially four if you don't die during the
yeah.
round.
It's not necessarily the same thing, obviously, because like the utility still gets dragged and detonates, so there could be collateral damage.
Decent gun,
But
MP5K,
decent gun though. I mean,
underrated.
he has impacts too now as well.
Yeah, which of
Like
course
you
with
can
the rise
still,
of Hibana doesn't help as much, but against Ace and stuff can be a big deal.
yeah. And I mean, if you were technically deciding to use him as a roamer and you only wanted to put a few magnets somewhere,
It still works because
like
2 speed and good gun.
I don't know. I still feel like he's sort of average. Like I mean,
I
he
think
still has
average.
good uses as well.
I
Like
think
you
that's
could
fair.
still use him on rafters. You could still use him yellow.
Mm-hmm.
You could still use him in spots and feel comfortable bringing him because you're like, hey, we want to use Wolmai to contest this spot longer. So I think he's somewhat in the average range.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely took a huge hit, like you said, from his nerf last season.
Yeah.
Like before, he was almost OP. He was like,
oh yeah, he was must pick.
Close to like Jaeger. He was pretty much like a Jaeger.
I would almost argue he was better than Jaeger at that point because of the deployable shield and stuff. Now, yeah, probably knocked down to average. The thing stopping him from being above average is again only 4 discs now, and you don't have a shield. It kind of just holds him back just a little bit. It requires a bit more of teams working around. I mean, you can still drop him into most lineups, and he'll do a decent job of it.
Mm-hmm.
Warden. Ooh, situational or niche? I mean, you and I have experimented with Warden many times in lineups before. We've tried it on that one coastline setup for Blue Bar. We've experimented with Warden, so we have our fair share of experience, and it just doesn't work. Everything they do to buff him, I think it's just inherently his core gadget just doesn't work as well as as envisioned initially. I think niche.
Yeah. I think niche as well. Just smoke plants in general, like trying to force like not like typically I'm not speaking of like hey, you smoke the rotates like deep to cut off lines of sight. I'm talking about like the meta of like you would literally just smoke in front of you and let Glaz or let someone just terrorize the rest of it. He's just not he's not great. His shield's nice. You can consider bringing him over like an alibi in that sense, or like an L if you wanted a better gun with a 1.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, his gadget forces him to be an anchor when he's not really a strong anchor.
Yeah. And end of the day, it doesn't protect you from frag grenades. Like, you're still going to get naded. So if you're trying to hold like Pixel on Cafe, if they clear that ADS, you're still dead. Like, it's, it doesn't change that.
Yeah, I guess what I meant to say actually before was I'm not saying he's a bad anchor, but when he's 2-speed with an MPX, he's almost like Valkyrie when you want to use him as a roamer.
Exactly.
But you can't use him as a roamer because you want to utilize his gadget. So like it's pretty niche. It's just not really worth bringing him.
Identity crisis.
Pretty much. A few operators in this game sadly have like identity crisis.
Yeah, I think Warden's probably our prime example of that identity crisis where he just is on both sides of the coin and it really just hurts him on both ends. Ying, situational for me. What do you think?
Ooh.
I don't think she's as strong or all-round of a flex pick as Iana, as Jackal, as Capitao. I think that's what knocks her down to situational. I think she's about on par with Dokubi Line for me as a flex pick.
Fair. Her utility is scary, and I think that's
when it works, it works well.
My argument for average would be like she brings a ton of utility between Yings that can clear. If it blows up in a magnet, it could also clear nearby other magnets or ADSs. You can also you can place them on floors to flash stuff out. She has 3 Candelas and 2 smokes, which is like that's a lot to bring, but I agree with you that still, I mean, she's so strong, and yet you don't see a lot of worth in her. You don't see her brought a lot, and people, people would say like, why? Why is she not brought then if she has such a great utility? And it's just like, if you bring the smokes, you don't have soft breach, so like you can't really use her in an entry or soft breach role at all. Obviously, she's basically firmly stuck in that flex spot. And I mean, smokes are good, but we looked at gridlock too. We saw like, hey, she has smokes, but her gadget itself is not the best thing. So like, I mean, Ying's gadget can be good if you clear out the utility.
It takes a lot of work to get her into play.
Yeah,
I think is the big thing.
Yeah, she's a very late round. Like her presence is all late round. It's like, hey, when we're about to make this plant go down, we're gonna send these Yings in.
And even then too, Candles don't always work. It's like flashbangs. Sometimes you just get really shafted by them.
That's true. But yeah, like I guess the problem is like not so many teams are setting up for plants. They've realized like, hey, if we're just setting up for a plant and we're leaving numbers up and we're leaving utility up, we could still get burned pretty easily.
Yeah.
I think that's why so many teams now are like, we just need to get the opening pick and we need to keep trading. We need to keep playing that advantage. And it's like, you don't want to have a Ying then who's you're setting up for a site plant, but if you're losing 2 or 3 people, then you're not really, it's not really the greatest option. It's not, a plant is not the greatest play then in that case, depending on the situation. So yeah, she is pretty situational because like, there's worth, and if it's the right situation and the right opportunity, she can
decimate. She can decimate.
But like otherwise, you wouldn't run her in a normal lineup. You don't want to like run her, consistently if you can't really get to that point of setting up a plant really. So.
She never really reached that potential either with clearing utility, right? It was very tough to it wasn't like Fuse where you can you can use it and put it on a ceiling and clear, but like it doesn't destroy it. Like so Jaeger ADSs are just going to regenerate and stuff. You're not destroying anything on site. So it's not like as a clearing gadget it was really that great because a lot of times by the time it would pop or be in range to pop and disable an ADS, the ADS already caught it as it was rolling up to it. So it's like
I agree.
It wasn't even really viable as a clearing gadget either was the problem. So yeah, I think we'll go situational for now. It was definitely like when she works really great, but as a plug and play, it's tough to put her higher. Now Zofia, above average probably, right? I mean, she's pretty much on par with Ashe. Yeah,
I think that's pretty easy to justify. It's like, hey, you want actual soft breach, but you also want the ability to burn some ADSs with concussions while you bring Zoph. She's not 3-speed like Ashe. Her gun is good, has a 2.0. Some people still would prefer the R4C or whatever, so.
R4C go burr.
Exactly. And especially on a 3-speed when people complain about her hitbox on her head, it's just like, hey.
Yeah.
Zoph is definitely the more sensible, conservative, and probably all-around better entry, I guess, but some teams really trust their Ashe players, so.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, Zoph's definitely above average.
Yep. And zero. Situational. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I liked him. If he had his frags back, average. Easy average lock. Maybe even higher. But without the frags, he's definitely relegated to a hard support role. Like,
yep. He is like basically if you want a definitive flank watch and you want someone to watch the cams, then you bring a Zero to be able to have additional cams.
Yep.
And not have to waste drones watching a flank, right? Like I guess Zero really does help in that sense of like, hey, you can dedicate more drones to like finding information, clearing it out. You don't have to waste drones on flank watch because you have a Zero. He also can burn ADSs, which is pretty nice with his cams, with his flashes. So,
but again, without the nades, he lacks a lot of.
Without the nades, like he's stuck in that flank watch, and
he could get bumped up to a flex roll with those nades, and you could use those cams more aggressively. You can shoot them down the end of attic on whatever. Like you can play more aggressive if you have those frags, but without those frags, you can't do it. You have the SC3000, great gun. You have the MP7, which is a great gun, but I'm still running the SC3000 because it's more all around, and on attack that's more important.
Now we got to the part that I'm kind of.
So now we have to do a little bit of theory crafting here. Aruni and new Tachanka. We'll start with Aruni, I guess, since she's first.
Yeah.
I want to drop her into above average. Only defender with the DMR.
So
That punch.
you said drop, and I thought you were gonna say situational.
Oh
So
no
you
no
said
no no
above
no!
average,
She's
and I was
definitely
like,
not
all right,
situational. She's definitely
I'm cool
not
with above average.
situational.
Yeah.
I'm thinking above average right now. Can soak utility can be reactivated in 30 seconds. So if they do it too soon, you can get the reactivation on it.
Yeah.
If the attack uses too much utility early in the round, can get punished for it because they have no way to deactivate it. Can't be destroyed. And again, you have the DMR. You have those punches as well, which can actually be a big deal for making rotates and stuff. It can help with that site setup side of things.
Yeah, for real.
You get barbed wire, slow down, the attackers who are walking in even further. Like, I think she's gonna slow. Like, it's not gonna come back as strong as it was with Wamai and Shields, but it will move back to a slightly more utility soak meta when she comes back, or when she comes into the pool, I should say.
I feel like right now you can somewhat haphazardly throw flashes at times, but like now with the Rooney, it's like you definitely are gonna need to save a flash or two. You can't. You don't want to burn a drone. You don't want to have to soak 40, 50 damage by walking through it. A Rooney can be definitely pretty good. And I mean, 2-speed, Mozzie's gun, doesn't have the nitro, which I think would make her very strong, like very strong. But luckily she doesn't. I mean, she still has, I think it's barb or bulletproof. So like you could bring
both
a camera for sight. You can, like you said, place them in doorways and force the attackers to have to clear it if they want to get map control on that side. Virtually indestructible. I think Thatcher can stable them. I'm not sure.
Temporarily.
Temporarily,
but same thing. So like
Yeah, so it's like she's practically, you can't really like take them down forever. Like their place and their presence is for the entire round if you can reactivate it. So
yeah,
Rooney very good.
And you have the creativity aspect as well. You can throw them up she can assist your roamers. People aren't going to think about that, but if you have a dedicated roam setup with reinforcements and pre-made rotates, you can set those up on those rotates, and the attackers cannot chase your defender through there without burning even more utility. Like, you can set up rotates in places where you might not have considered it before because, again, you have that extra bit of cover now on the rotate.
Yeah, I agree. And pretty decent all-around kit.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just really, she can make rotates with her passive mechanical arm ability. And she has a, DMR or the Roni, decent guns.
Yeah, they're both usable guns.
2-speed, like just all around a decent op to bring. So
yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment we gave of her. Now Tachanka, I gotta say, after playing him a bunch, like yes, I like his LMG and that's fun to use and stuff. After playing him a bunch, he does not hold up to smoke for me. Does not do it. His launcher takes way too long to reload in situations. So if you use up those initial 5 shells and you're still trying to deny a push or a plant or whatever, and you have to go back. I mean, you have to reload. It's like reloading a shotgun. You're reloading them 1, 2, 3. It's not like a whole mag reload, So it's a very slow reload. You can get punished because it takes too long to get your gun back out after using it. Unlike smoke, where like, you just throw the canister, press the button, your gun's back up already. The LMG takes a lot longer to pull back out. Again, Smoke can just make all those rotates, and he has the SMG-11 as a failsafe, where Tachanka only has that LMG and some pistols. I mean, he doesn't equal up to Smoke, and I can't even put him in average tier because Smoke just fills that role so well.
Yeah, I think Tachanka, I mean, he is banned right now, obviously, until next season, like a Rooney. If initially, people liked him a lot.
Yeah, you were looking at the numbers and stuff, and it looks great.
Yeah. I think his issue, like you said, is his utility. I mean, he can deny longer than Smoke.
Yeah.
But the issue is it's not as instantaneous. Like, you need to actually pull it out.
The bounces are weird, too, sometimes. Those bounces can be weird.
True. And like you said, reloading. So, like, overall, the interaction with his gadget is a lot clankier, a lot slower, and that could punish him.
Yep.
He has the LMG, though.
The LMG is nice.
Make rotates, too, but it's not like a sure, you're eating your own ammo.
Yep.
By making rotates in your primary gun. It's tough, man. Like, I don't want to...
I think situational, honestly. He's like if Smoke and Maestro had a really weird baby, that's what you get with Tachanka. Like, he's just kind of different.
I mean, he doesn't even bring a shield either, so, like, he's not like Smoke where he has that extra shield. I think losing the shield also hurts him a bit. Like, because some people could justify his
If
gadget.
you brought back the
if you
shield,
want,
yeah, you can maybe.
yeah. If you
bump
want his
to
gadget,
average.
you'll bring his gadget, right?
Yeah.
With him, like if you were thinking you wanted to chonk over smoke on a site for his gadget, then like
Yeah, if you're really concerned about longer angles, I'm probably gonna run Tachanka, maybe, but only for like extreme situations. Yeah. Like it's not gonna be most of the time. I'm still gonna bring a smoke, even if I'm slightly concerned about the longer angles. Just better all around.
I could see him situational. I feel like at first, like when he first comes out, teams will experiment with him. He'll become somewhat average, but I feel like with time he will somewhat become a bit more situational. And it's like
I mean, teams are 100% going to experiment him with. You're definitely right on that, but like the pick rate does not equal the ability always. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see some operators who have really high pick rates at times, and it's like, well, not really high, but like sometimes they have pick rates, and it's like, why? Like it does not equal what they bring. And on the flip side, there's some operators with really good utility, like Iana, who doesn't have an amazing pick rate. So you can't always like.
It's all about purpose. It's like, what will you actually use it for? And it's like, well, if you don't want to take him out over a smoke, then you don't really have a room for Tachanka. So like, he becomes situational, I guess, and it's only when you don't want to smoke.
Yeah,
because smoke is that strong. So
yeah, smoke's just really good at what he does.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job.
With this list, I think we have a pretty, I
think this is solid. I mean, we have a really good curve. Our OP tier isn't like ridiculously stacked out. Our above average is, about only slightly bigger than the average. I think when you consider how Siege is as a game, I think these tiers, the amount that they are filled out each makes sense. Some people are gonna be like, "Oh, Band has MP7 average." All right, yeah, sure, maybe like, or someone's gonna be like, "Gridlock's a niche." Like, all right, okay, maybe like, yeah, things change even during the course of the season. Things change, but
I mean, it makes sense. This is almost like a bell curve, right? It's like what you kind of want, where you have a lot of options in the middling area.
Yep.
And because you don't want like surefire operators, like that's you don't want that in Siege. You don't want to have all the lineups be exactly the same. Because then it's a problem of like, well, there's just no good options. Like there's no variability. Everyone's just going to do the same thing. It's going to get stale, whatever. I think it's good right now because obviously with the pick bans too, you will see a lot of these OP operators get banned a lot.
Yeah.
So like then it forces a ton of the above average, even situational picks, which is what you want.
Exactly. And your niche picks are only pulled out very specific situations, like, so it's not like you're seeing niche picks just being picked because why not? Like, so niches are definitively lower than your situational, definitively lower than your average,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say situational average are pretty close, but still, like,
yeah, they're close. I would say, especially on the defender side, because defenses depend so much around what is the setup. Like Castle for some teams is indispensable, where other teams haven't ran him ever. So that varies. But like it makes sense too if you look at the OP tier. Say you're making an attacker lineup. I'm picking like Ace, Hibana, Thatcher. If all three of them are on the board, that's a really strong 3 for your attacker core, and then you just pick 2 from your above average. You're picking, I don't know, Ashe and Zoph, or Ashe and Sledge. Like you have those options right there, and like that's a very strong attacker lineup. That makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
This list is also pretty indicative of like how the competitive op compositions look in general. Like we said, those ops get banned on top. If they're not banned, you're bringing them. They have a huge presence, like ban and pick rates combined.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, I mean, I guess it's not a huge issue, but it is like the nature of Siege at this point where it's like, hey, you have most of your picks in your lineup are probably going to be your above averages, probably because your OPs are getting banned. But
yeah, exactly.
Still, you have a ton of above average picks. You can see quite a few average.
Yeah, you still see enough of your average, and then your situational are getting pulled out here and there. I
think for like a competitive standpoint, obviously like the boundary, I guess, is somewhat more in the OP to niche. Like you obviously don't ever see your throwing.
Yeah.
We don't ever justify. We can't really justify bringing the throwing ones, is what this tier list shows. Like in terms of Siege in general, like you have a very good pool of operators between above average and situational. You have a few OP operators that you would always want to bring, and that's just Siege. And then you have quite a bit of niche operators that you almost would never want to bring, but there
in
is
their circumstances.
sometimes there is a weird circumstance that you see them brought.
Yep.
But like you definitely want to, look at the above average and average operators to make a lot of your lineups.
Mm-hmm.
What situational you give a look at if you have a very specific need in a strat.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you have OP available, you take OP. Niche is very, very last. This is the last option.
Yeah, you're scraping towards the bottom
that you
now.
look into. We would recommend you don't pick those, but
unless you have a very specific, like a Clash hold or something like that. Like you're not picking those niche or the DZA Clubhouse Roam. You're not picking Oryx like otherwise.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is definitely very indicative, I feel like, of the strength of these operators. And it's not just, we're looking at pick rate or, we're just looking at purely their gadgets. Like we took a huge consideration to every pick here, and I think it came out pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, that about wraps it up. I mean, this was a pretty good thought exercise. It helped me gain even my own a bit more perspective on things. Same. Looking at it, making sure that we're always bringing our best available and so on. So, this was a pretty good thought exercise. I hope everyone else who ends up watching this as well thinks the same. Anyways, guys, that about wraps it up. So from myself and Moss, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned. We hope to bring more videos like this for you soon.